All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, FCM community. This is your yearly draft pod recast, which absolutely made no sense, but that just proves that I'm already tired before this gets started. So that's a great side. This is your podcast for your draft recap, which makes more sense. It is me and Maddie here at the moment. More people might join, come in, come out as it goes along. Just the same shit that always happens. It is what it is. So we are going to do what we do every year. I shouldn't have to go through it, but I will anyway, just in case there's new listeners this year, which there might be. Who knows? We got a couple new GMs floating around. But we will go through the top 30 picks, pick by pick, give our brief opinion, either yay or nay on the pick, maybe a little bit of both. And then after that, maybe a brief rundown of picks that we like past the first round, second, third round, and beyond. If there were any picks that we liked in those rounds, we will mention them and make note of them. So we will start with the top pick this year, and it was apparently the only pick that Minnesota actually made. Minnesota added a bunch of draft picks. Only made one pick after their tanking last year, and then the rest were kind of apparently autoed. But the first pick, I'd say, was a good pick, and that is George Rivera, 17-year-old right fielder. Typical guy that tends to go the top half of the draft, top three positions or so in the draft every year, and he is a speedy outfielder. Currently in right field, the switch to center field, I think, is a foregone conclusion, unless Mass just prefers him to be in right or left. I don't know why, but I would put him in center field myself. It's got some good speed, should get on base quite a bit. It's got a nice contact rating. Power's pretty low. I wouldn't expect too many home runs out of him. Every now and again, you get these speed guys that still put up a couple home runs, and it's nice to see. I'm not sure I'm seeing that out of him per se. What I am seeing is somebody that should have a pretty good on-base percentage, should have a decent OPS, and get on base a lot, and should steal a ton of bags. I always say should because you never know. Our file is predictable to an extent and wonky to an extent. So you never know which speed guy you're going to get. There's kind of a couple different builds, but I really like this guy. I mean, if I had the number one pick, this is the guy I'd probably be taking. So, Maddie, what do you think?
Well, I will say that I think you can infer how many steals he will get. One, you can see just by the counting number steals. He only has 210 seasons, and he has one that's as low as 4. As I always say, just because you see one low, low, low number, and maybe it's even like a freshman year, it could still mean something. And then you go to his base stealing numbers, and the steal tendency is below the base stealing. Aggressiveness is low. But the one thing that is interesting that he was never caught stealing. I think he could be a guy who's very, very efficient, but maybe a guy who's only going to get about 25 to 30 steals a year. Another thing just to kind of look at is he also does have a couple seasons where he had no doubles, and he only totaled 2 triples in his entire high school career. So while he is very, very fast, I do kind of wonder if it's more of that like straight line speed rather than actual on the bases being a threat speed. Obviously, yes, you if you get him on second base, he's gonna score. You can see in the other base running numbers that he can get first to third, which I kind of also go second to home as well. The defense, yeah, if you're not playing him in center field, you're not realizing he's elite defensively. Um, so yeah, but still, definitely a good pick. But I guess for me, not just so um, head over heels for him just because of he might be more straight line speed rather than steal and base running speed.
And that makes sense. And then maybe so. I mean, that's quite the build we've seen with some of the guys coming out of the draft the last couple of years who've been, I'd say, maybe have the potential to be more prolific on the base path. Though again, the point that he hasn't been caught stealing once in all of his high school could mean he'll be very good at it, just maybe not as aggressive or get as many as you would like to see. So something that just popped into my mind that I don't know if there actually is an answer for this, but I figured I'd pose it before we get too much further. When we're seeing these high school and collegiate stats on these players, does Mogul just use a generic stadium for everybody in the amateur and college numbers, or does it change like it would in actually FCM file where we all have different stadiums with different unique quirks and stuff like that?
Not sure if that's kind of just a question just to toss out there, but I'll just
Yeah.
say, just in general, I think you look at like the minor league numbers and all that. I think it's an in general. It's based off of their their actual skills. It's not
Okay,
just,
so
oh,
it's not, but
I
yeah.
don't think it certainly could be, but I wouldn't see a reason why Mogul would do that. But this is also a clay made game, so it could.
And that's kind of where my question is from, because I know people have complained nauseum at times about different quirks that Clay has done in different versions of this game that is his. So it's just one of those things that I never thought of till now. Like, oh, I wonder if this is like, and in my mind, I kind of take it all in the bubble. Like, these are the stats that they're putting up because they're all in the same, they're all hitting what would be considered maybe in the same park. But, then my thought, like, oh, I wonder if there is difference or not. Like, I don't know. I don't know why a game would go that
Yeah, I don't
finicky.
either.
It
But
would it wouldn't make sense to me, but that being said, we've all said and known that Clay can be a little eccentric with things. So it's just something that just popped in my head. I'm like, huh, I never thought of this, but I'm curious if when we're looking at these amateur and college numbers, if this is all just in a vacuum per se, like these are all because they're all batting or pitching the same type, like of the generic ballpark, let's say,
yeah,
opposed
I
to the very
think
specialized parks that we see in actual human-run teams.
yeah, I would really think that all the parks are just basic generic hundreds down the line. The only thing I think you can really maybe kind of suggest from the stats is they are driven by how good they are on the March 1st file. So whatever their overall is from there, that's pretty much
Gotcha.
their
Yeah,
stats are driven from.
I got you. Yeah,
As
we've
we've
talked
seen,
about
there's been
that.
some guys. Sorry, but yeah, there's been some guys who are very what do you say, very progressed. We have some pitchers. If you have like a 75 overall guy, he's probably gonna have a lot better stats than a guy who's 50 overall.
Right. And that's what I was just about to say, that we've talked about that in pods past. The guys that are more advanced with their vitals, tend to put up better numbers with them, or have the potential at least to put up better numbers with them. So, all right, as I said, I wanted to keep this podcast in relatively tight ship. We go off on a tangent after pick one. So, still par for the course, I'm going to call it. We're going to move on to pick two. Pick two was the Mets. Mets had back-to-back picks here, second and third, and then a slew of other picks throughout the first rounds and beyond. And the second pick was Ross Diller, right-handed 17-year-old pitcher. I think that for some, if not most, this was the pitcher that most people would have wanted in the draft. If they had a pitcher to pick, this would be the guy they want. I know this was the guy that was the number one pitcher on my board, was Ross Diller. I really like him. Now, this build is interesting because I've seen this build. We had a guy that had this build a couple years ago that I think a lot of people liked. Actually, I think Stang took him, Arianando, and he had this very similar, 71 control power, then lagging movement build. I think he was a little more advanced. I think his overall was a little bit higher. I have to go back and look, and I don't feel like doing that right now. And he did not turn out well, we'll say. I don't think that's the case for Diller. Diller is 17. I want to say Ariando might have been older. But I do like Ross Diller quite a bit. It looks like he's going to have low home run numbers. He did a one season of 9, but that was also the season he pitched the most innings. His strikeout to walkout ratio is pretty decent. I like it. He's definitely a pitcher that looks to be a power pitcher, potentially with some good control, and I'm going to guess his movement jumps significantly. Good fastball, good slider, good changeup, decent curve. Really like this pitcher. He's definitely the guy I would have taken. If I have one of the top two picks, I'm taking one of these two guys. I think it was an easy, very clear top two picks this year. But who knows? Everybody drafts a little bit different. Everybody scouts a little.
Yeah, I think he was a top guy. I don't know if he was the top pitcher because, to be honest, I didn't start scouting until Saturday morning, so that was like around like the middle of the first round. I think where you left off with your picks is where I started, so I didn't really even care to look at the top of the draft. But just looking at him, and looking at my scout file, he projects 90s control and 90s movement, and then high 80s power. If he hits, around, in the 92, 93 range, I mean, I look at the build, and yeah, I would probably agree with that. The home runs, yeah, there's nothing to worry about. The one season that's slightly, ever so slightly high, but you got to think he's still pretty raw. So yeah, a lot to like about him, a lot to think that he can develop into a pretty good pitcher.
I was right. Atlanta did draft him. Angel Arianando, 16th overall, way back in 2086. But he was a no, so he was a 60, looks like 60-87 on draft day. So, but I remember he had a very similar vital set where he was like 70 or 71 with both control and power. He ended up having a solid career, but not nothing spectacular. 4.29 ERA, 96 and 105 over 265 games start. So again, not the worst pitcher, but not a guy that you were able to kind of build a team around. So I think Diller will probably be better than that, but again, we'll see. Mets picked again, and Mets picked Marty Friedman, a 19-year-old left-handed pitcher. This draft was chock full of lefty pitchers. As I believe Andy said early on in the process, Mike's going to love this draft. I loved aspects of it. It wasn't necessarily my favorite draft we've seen, but there was definitely a lot of lefty pitchers to pick from, and one went 3 overall. And Marty Friedman, he is a 19-year-old guy that looks to be a guy that should be the control movement type build. Obviously, the power is 11 below his overall. His ground ball average is at 45, but I would like to think that we'll raise up a little bit, maybe get to that 48, 49 range, which give him that high ground ball range. Good fastball, okay cutter, poor changeup. It's an interesting guy. Again, another guy whose home runs don't seem like they should be a problem. Okay, strikeout to walkout ratio. He was a guy I was thinking about. He was definitely a guy that made my list. He's currently listed as a long reliever, so hopefully Dex sees that and fixes it. I'm assuming he picked him as a starter. So it is an interesting player. It'll be, if he gets to that high ground ball rate, he could be a good player. If not, he still might be. He'll still probably be pretty good. But I'm curious at what kind of direction he takes, and where he ends up.
Yeah, I think he's a real interesting guy. Really, looking through my scout file, the one thing that caught my eye, and I will admit that the one thing that the file can kind of overrate is a player's movement, but it projected Marty Friedman's movement at 99. I don't think it'll get there because that's pretty rare for us. But when I look at it, I see a guy who has a 188, 209, and 208 batting average against. So that's something that's pretty darn cool. I would say the home runs actually might be a little bit of a concern, simply because he does have a 71 movement, and there's that one season that is pretty high, and senior year is pretty much like right there where you would want it, like right at like a 1.0. So it's close, and being a 71, that might put him in a little bit of a home run issue. However, the build's really good. It's going to be a pretty high control, high movement build. Um, the ground ball rate's solid. You would like to probably see it a little higher with a guy who's more of a finesse guy, but I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a guy high.
No, like I said, I like him. I think I've seen, unless I have been drunk for many, many years, ground ball rates can also grow a little bit. So, I mean, even if it just grows that, I forget where the cutoff is. I want to say 3%. You should get a ground ball pitcher out of him. And again, I like the guy. I'm definitely not going to knock him. Again, there was a pitcher I liked a lot more that I thought was going to go higher than he did. A couple of them, actually. So when I saw Friedman go number 3, I started to get a little hope that early, and then had to kind of squeeze out hope through the rest of the round. So, but we'll move on to Arizona, who picked 4th and took another left-handed pitcher. That would be Jose Urquiza. Another 19-year-old and another guy. This guy is already a high ground ball rate pitcher. He's already at a 50%. He pretty good curveball, okay slider. Another guy that home runs are definitely not going to be an issue with this guy. I mean, his high season was 4 out of almost 60 innings pitched. So Strikeout to walkout ratio is pretty good. His OBA is, I would have called Jekyll and Hyde. Not the first or last time you'll hear that out of my mouth this time. Almost 300, 275, then 225, 209. So he might go back and forth a little bit. Another guy set in long relief because he has that 65 endurance. Hopefully Ren has notified that. And again, I'm assuming these guys are going to be starters. There's no reason to think they won't be. Another guy that I liked in this draft, and I think was a good pick here at 4, especially watching Friedman go at 3. I think it made a lot of sense, especially if you liked him, to take Urquiza next at 4.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what you said there. Not a bad guy to take at all. Ground ball rates there. Love a pretty good fastball. It's kind of weird. You have a good fastball, but you're more of a finesse pitcher. This is kind of the weird, quirky things that Mogul does. The home runs will not be an issue. The only thing that I always kind of get a little weirded out by is pitchers that are a little bit more advanced. It just always seems like that they just, if you don't hit the early jumps, that they just do not get there. That'd be my only drawback, but it's not one that I wouldn't want to take him very high because you see his resume. That's a pitcher that you'd really like to have.
Yeah, and again, 19. I mean, yes, he does turn 20 here next sim. I'm sorry, 2 sims from now. But still, I mean, I do like this guy. But you're right. The more advanced, again, there's the pitcher in a little bit. We'll talk about those. I felt was even more advanced. It'd be interesting to see how that he progresses. But again, I thought Arizona did well here. San Diego was up next. San Diego took another young lefty pitcher. Again, probably talk about this a lot tonight. Eric Hansel, 17-year-old lefty, went next to San Diego. He is not going to be a ground ball pitcher. Well, I would suggest he's probably not going to be the ground ball pitcher. He looks to be more the power type build. His power is 8 above his overall. His control is just above his overall. His movement is just below. So, an interesting type of pitcher. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's the type of pitcher that I'm generally accused of going after almost exclusively. And he is a guy that I looked at quite a bit before the draft because I thought for sure he would be available in my range. And just because of some of the red flags that I see. So strikeout to walkout ratio is pretty good. I like that. Home runs are really high. And again, not astronomically high, maybe for some people they can be scared, but I think most people, when they see double-digit home runs for draftees, usually scares them off. So again, you had 2-year seasons where his OBA was low, 2 where it wasn't too high, but not great. But slightly higher home runs, which, when you're seeing that high in high school and college, tend to translate poorly moving forward. It can be, not all the time, but can be an issue. He has a good fastball. He's got a good changeup, which is good. Okay curveball. Again, my concern with him, at 17, I think he's got a little bit of time left. Obviously, he has time left to get that control up there. But control that close to the overall scares me a little bit, even with the guy that's young. So,
yeah, I think when I first saw him, my thought was, yeah, bleh. But the more I look at him, I give him a little bit of a chance. He's not terrible. He projects okay. We did see him age. He dropped from a 93 to a 92 or a 91. So, you're going to have time for him to develop. He's not going to be a guy who's randomly going to peak out at like 22. So.
I think we lost you there. At least I lost you. But yeah, so with that case, the low drop on his birthday means he has a little bit more time to develop. He's not going to develop into 3 or 4 years, probably more like 6 years or 7 years. The little bit more time he has, the more chance that control has to stay close to that overall, which means the higher he peaks, the better the overall is going to be. It will make a big difference. You want to see that control get in at least the low 80s for him to be a very good pitcher, and at least the upper 70s for him to be a serviceable pitcher. So, Maddie, once I'm able to hear you, I will let you know. Until then, I will just continue to move on. So, the next pick in the draft after Hansel was the 6th pick overall, and that was Colorado. And Colorado took Mark McConaughey, 20-year-old lefty. big shocker here. Another one of those very interesting builds. So he is a 70-93, and his control, power, movement all clock in at 71 on the dot. So another one of those very interesting build type pitchers. Got a very strong fastball. So can anybody else hear me? Just want to make sure that I'm not talking into the ether for no apparent reason. Somebody wants to type perfect. Yes, everybody can still hear me. Okay. Maddie's having technical difficulties. He will be back when he can be. Everybody can hear me, so that's great. So again, Mark McConaughey, very interesting cat. Huge fastball. I know if Dan was on here, he'd tell you he loves the huge fastball. Okay circle change, pretty good two-seamer, decent curveball. Pitches it pretty darn fast, 95 to 97. Decent strikeout to walk ratio. Not great, decent. That first year in college, he had a bump up in home runs. That's not something that you like to see. But it's one of those things that I do see in draft picks quite frequently, where they have relatively okay home run numbers in high school level, and then as soon as they go up to college, boom, it explodes. So, I mean, he almost doubled his previous years. He over doubled most of his previous years for that. But ERA remained low. The OBA didn't get too out of hand. So it'll be interesting to see how he moves on, how he projects. I think it's a good pick. I think that Colorado did well for this pick. I think that once Matty can hear me now, so hopefully we can hear him soon. I think Matty will say that he projects probably pretty well with his magical file. That would be my guess. So I think it's a good pick. Is it going to be a guy that goes straight 90s across the board? I don't think so. I don't think we really had any of those pitchers in this draft this year. But I think he's going to be a darn good pitcher and a guy that could anchor down that rotation out there in the Rockies as they rebuild once again. So
yeah. So I guess I'm back now.
Perfect. I hear you. Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, I don't know. I'll just finish up that last one. I don't know where I cut off, but blah blah blah. Words. Basically, what Mizzy said. I'd slap the good old 3-star grade on Hansel because I can't really get a good read on him either way. But McCone, yeah, solid dude. One of the first thoughts I saw in him is the home runs his first year of college were a little high. Wouldn't be worried about that just because of, in general, I think like many times in a player's first year in college, their numbers will be a little bit higher, and then they go to their sophomore year, they're right back to where you saw they were in high school. Yeah, he does project pretty well. He projects mid to upper 80s control, low 80s power, and 90s movement, mid 90s to be exact. And yeah, that's exactly probably that's pretty much where I would see him. Really good pitcher, really good. A lot of other words to just say that. Yeah, I think he would definitely have been one of my top pitchers in the draft. Could probably definitely put him I would say in my top 3.
Yeah, if I was looking at it just as a straight top 3, yeah. I mean, Diller, him, and another we'll talk about in a little bit would have been probably my top 3. There's a couple other guys I also liked quite a bit that maybe wouldn't have ranked in my top 3, but personally, just based on where I thought guys were going to go, were a little bit higher for me. One of which we'll talk about here right before the end of the top 10. But at this point, we will move on past Mark, and we will move on to the first. Wasn't the first batter. I apologize. Batter obviously went number 1 all, but and a long string of lefties. We have a slight break here as Boston takes Aaron Atkin. Aaron Atkin goes next to Boston. He is a 21-year-old switch hitting first baseman. So it looks like a good bat. I mean, let's be honest. He was not a guy that was on my board, not because I thought he was going to be a bad pick or anything like that, but I have a slew of first basemen. If the last thing I need is another first baseman. So he did not make my list. And I was a little bit surprised to see him go this high. Again, not because I think he's going to be a bad player per se. I think he's going to be a pretty solid bat. But he had a big jump. He was a guy that at the start of the file was a 64-86. and then got that big jump to 68, 93. So those big jumpers, for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm just, they always make me a little bit wary, especially a guy that's 21 and turns 22 right here before the start of the offseason in October. So, but not necessarily that means anything bad, but I am curious at how long he'll have to develop and where he'll develop at. If he doesn't have long developed, that contact might not get too much higher, and that could be a problem for a guy that, as a switch hitter, you would like to see some good contact out of. As far as his stats go, I mean, you don't dislike the stats. He hits pretty good home runs. Definitely seems to be more of a home run than a double hitter. There is a walk to strikeout ratio there. I mean, he's struck more often than not. He's striking out more than he's walking. His OPS is pretty solid across the board, and his average is pretty solid across the board. Again, not a guy that was on my list, not a guy that I was super high on, but I don't think this was the worst pick in the first round.
I don't really like him just for the fact of like you said, he already jumped. And I do
Big
kind of look
jump
at it. Yeah, and I mean that could mean that his peak isn't going to fall, back down to a 6, but sometimes it does. I think in the end, it's going to be a guy who you're going to look at and say, that's kind of like late first, early second round talent. Um, Still a solid player. You're not going to just lose all value, but I kind of think that a lot of the value on him taken is because he's a switch hitter. That's good. That's valuable, but they actually have to be good for it to be really valuable that they're a switch hitter, or else they can just be a lefty and then you can platoon them. Whatever, who cares? Um, so yeah, I think this would be definitely a below average pick for the spot. Solid player, but I think taken away too early. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see a first base DH guy taken later in the draft be better than.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at one take. It looks like mid round, who was the one that I would have actually considered taking earlier in the draft than later in the draft. Again, this guy just did not hit my board, and that's fine. I mean, if everybody had the same board, it'd be a very frustrating and annoying draft every year. And for some people, it is a frustrating and annoying draft. I know. At the very best, Rocky and I went back and forth a couple times. Like, oh, you took the guy. Like, oh, you took the guy that I like. We were just chatting back and forth, pre-draft and during the draft, about we clearly had a very similar draft board when compared to each other. Atlanta's first pick clocks in at number 8, and that was Leon, who likes his money, Alocare, a 21-year-old catcher. This is a guy that, in a draft where there wasn't a lot of catching, probably the best catcher in the draft. I would argue best catcher in the draft. I know others might as well. Decent arm, good handling, solid fielding, good health, really good eye. I mean, his highs are already an 85. And on the offensive side, I mean, he's batting pretty well. I mean, he's a guy who's had a pretty darn high OPS every year, good average. He hits a fair amount of power. Looks like it might be more double power than a home run power. I'm okay with that. I won't have everybody on my team like that, but it's always okay to have a guy on your team that is going to hit more doubles than home runs. That's not going to hurt you. I think he is a pretty solid, if not darn good looking hitter. Also, taking the fact that his contact at right now is a 67, and then he gets ready to 66. So his ready contact is just below his actual contact, and his lefty contact is a little bit higher. So that theoretically should mean he should hit righties as well as lefties pretty evenly and pretty well. So you put on the fact that defensively he's pretty good. Caught stealing numbers a little bit lower than maybe some want to see, but I don't think it's going to hold him back. I think that he should be a pretty darn good player. I know I talked to at least one GM before the draft when I said, "Oh, just grab Alakar. He'll be there mid round." Like, no, he'll go really early. And I'm thinking, like, maybe he will, maybe he won't. In a draft like this, where either you like left-hand pitching or you want something else, not surprised that he went where he did. I think he should be a darn good catcher.
Yeah, I would say that I think for the fact that he doesn't have a real strong arm, I think he was taken a little too early. But the fact that Atlanta has so many picks in the draft, it's not a bad play to take him now because I think he's the only true real catcher in this draft. Yes, I know there's another one that's not bad, but if you're gonna say a guy who could really be a difference maker as a hitter, this is a guy that's probably it. And his defense, yeah, he won't he's not going to be a big time. What do you want to say? A base catcher, stealer guy. He's not going to throw a lot of guys out, but he won't be putrid. Other than that, he'll be a pretty solid player. And if you really don't like his defense, you can slide him over to first base. He'll be really good there. So yeah, overall, still, I think overall when you take into consideration that Atlanta has 5,900 picks in this draft, not a bad pick at all. Good pick.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point too. The more picks you have, the more you can kind of be a little bit risky in spots. Maybe not the first pick you have, you're a little bit risky, but I like them. And I definitely think that you've seen more people over the last decade or so start to lean a little bit away from those high arm guys and start to be okay with the slightly lower arm, higher handling guys. Not everybody, but there are some GMs that are starting to make that switch. And for some of those catchers, when they work out, it's not really an issue. It's working out well for them. So I like the pick by Atlanta. Next pitcher, Tim, don't burn me because I'm a witch. 20-year-old left-handed starting pitcher goes to Oakland. This is one of those guys that everybody assumed, at least everybody that I talked to pre-draft, thought that I was all in on and was going to just gobble up as soon as I could. He was on my board. I do like Tim Witch quite a bit. Couple of issues with him. I mean, the walk out the strike out the walk out ratio is probably one of the better I saw in the draft. Again, he's a little bit more advanced with his vitals. I mean, they're all above 70. He's got a dominant fastball. He's got a solid circle change and an okay curve. I really did like Witch quite a bit. I just like the name. I just like the build. I like the way that he looked. I was a little concerned about the home runs. But when I did my math, which I can do on occasion, I mean, most years he's at about 1 per 8. Most people aren't going to like that. Most people aren't going to like to see the double digits most years, even though it did drop that first year in college a little bit. His numbers in the first year in college look quite good. Probably actually the best out of all of his previous seasons. But when I do my math, if I can get a guy that gives up around or less than 1 per game, I'm okay with it. I'll make exceptions for a guy like this who I just really like. I think he looks like a really good pitcher. Will he be a really good pitcher? I hope not. He went to my division, but I think he will be. I think he'll be quite a good pitcher out there in Oakland.
Well, I'll say I think it's very sad that Mogul didn't take this opportunity to make him from Salem, Massachusetts. That would have been just
Mogul gives and Mogul
so
taketh
awesome.
away. Where is he from? I didn't even look at that. Oregon.
He's from Corvallis. Yeah. Which also I always just kind of find funny on this one, the fact that he's from basically Oregon State and puts him in Texas. Sure, that stuff happens, but it's like Mogul never just makes a guy go to the local college. It seems like it just never does that. But
whatever algorithm they use is just a little bit whacked.
Yep, pretty much. But on the pitching side, talent-wise, it's okay. Home runs are definitely a big concern, being that he's a 72 and has 71 movements. Everything is in the 70s, and those home run issues are there. I think they're legit, being that he's 30 ground ball percent guy. Something I'd be really concerned with, especially since you'd think that definitely that the movement overtakes the power. He's not really going to be a true power guy, and by my projections, the control will slightly overtake the power as well. So I think he can be that guy when everything's on. He's really good, but when the home runs are high, like they're probably gonna be, he's just okay. 4.10 ERA guy.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And it's one of those guys that I almost had hoped would go anywhere else but Oakland, since Oakland doesn't tend to trade guys once they draft them or get them. He's definitely a pitcher that would be okay in some places that I would gladly take at some point down the future to try out in Seattle.
And for you, he also has Oakland has seemed to have really odd, dumb luck with pitchers. I know, like Scheffler, I remember him on draft day just looked like, why would you take this guy? And
now he's one of the best
developed at an insane rate in like 2.5 years to become a star.
Yep.
So if he does anything like that, yeah, you're screwed.
a star that was sadly unavailable for trade. But that is neither here nor there. So, tease us a little bit earlier. Pick 10, Chicago takes Peter Gonzalez. Peter Gonzalez is a 21-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. 50% ground ball rate. He's got a good slider, solid curve, okay fastball. And looks like your typical control movement guy. He is a guy that, for the most part, seems to be a little bit lower on the home run end. Also lower on the strikeout to walkout ratio, and his walk to strikeout are, I guess, not bad. I guess there was just a couple seasons where I looked at him, I'm just like, 29 to 21, I wasn't a fan of that. 24 to 13 is not a big thing. Like some other ones start to stretch it out a little bit more. 22 to 14, again, like not even 2 to 1, but again, he's a ground ball pitcher, so I guess that, and that rate is not the worst thing to have. But he's another one of those guys that I think, how much time does he have to develop? He was the guy that I was sitting there at 13, 14. I had 3 guys on my list. And then Peter Gonzalez goes. I'm like, okay, that's one bullet dodged. Because, I did like Gonzalez, that he was on my list at some point. He wasn't at the top of my board for me. And again, not saying that I think he's going to be a bad pitcher, but he is 21. He'll turn 22, I think, right before spring training next year. And it's just a matter of how much time does he have to develop, and what will he develop into. I mean, obviously, I think he's going to develop into a ground ball pitcher. The question is, how good a ground ball pitcher will he have enough time to become a star ground ball pitcher? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. So he was on my list, but he was a little bit further down. Maddie, where did you have this gentleman?
Of course, like I said, I didn't really start scouting until your picks, but he's a guy who I would see it as the guy's already jumped, and he jumped full overall in just one peak. It just doesn't give me a lot of faith that the guy's like you said, like he's gonna have a lot of time to develop. Yeah, it's kind of. I think he was a guy in the chat. I said he's kind of a high floor, low ceiling guy. I don't see him becoming really good. Maybe to our surprise, he'll develop for another 6 years, and that would afford him the time to become really good. But I think on the evidence that we see on draft day, probably not going to have that much time to develop. You're probably looking at 3 or 4 more years, and that'll be a guy who's good, pretty solid, but not a top of the rotation on.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with that. And again, you're right about that jump that was nice but not great. You're looking at it, and my total guess would be like when he drops back, he's going to drop back closer to where that overall peak that he's been sitting at for a while now. And for whatever reason, I always see like those guys that jump and then drop back to their peak every year. Like, if that is indeed where they peak out, so if he does indeed peak out around that 85 area, he's probably not going to be the dominant 85 that you might see in some of the other ground ball types that we have around the league. So I think he'll be a decent pitcher. He was definitely on my list, but again, how much time does he develop? That was my concern. Next pick was the first pick in the draft that I went a little bit like, huh? And Jermaine, I do apologize since it's your pick and you're the one that does save these podcasts for us, but Rick Williams, second baseman, goes 11 overall to Pittsburgh. Again, I made that sound when it was picked, and that was followed by a squeal of joy because that meant I was that much closer to get one of the guys that I really wanted. But I did not understand this pick. He has speed that seems to be all steal tendency and aggressiveness, but the actual speed and the actual base stealing and stuff and the decision making appear to be to me low. He is a switch hitter. He is 20 years old. I mean, he's not going to hit a birthday until before next year, so these are all good things. His fielding seems to be pretty solid, if not very good at second base. And his batting seems to be pretty good. He looks to be mostly in the 600 for OPS, so not somebody that I would be knocking down the doors to get per se. Seems like a fair amount of doubles, good for at least a triple a year, it looks like. Maybe peppering a couple home runs. I don't know. I'll put it this way: I was underwhelmed by this pick. Not saying he's going to be a bad player. Not saying that it's going to be a wasted pick. But I was just underwhelmed on this guy. I just don't think his defense is going to be an elite level. It'll be good, but not an elite level. I think his contact and speed are probably going to end up maybe in the low to mid 80s, and the rest of it's going to end up where it ends up, like a solid starter. But it just didn't seem like a guy that was worth the 11th pick of the draft. Even a draft like this, where I know a lot of people were hot and cold on.
Yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts on him pretty much. I kind of thought there were better second basemen than him, or at least better guys to take a chance on and see if they can become something pretty good. I did think there were a lot of those kind of second basemen in this draft, to be honest. There wasn't really one second baseman that was, yeah, he's the guy. Even shortstops, just there were like two shortstops in the entire draft, like total good or bad. I think kind of why he was taken was because he's a switch hitter. So if he becomes good, that'll be really valuable. And the fact that he runs a lot. And even with these guys, it's kind of like a thing of with your strategies is you can bump up the base stealing, but that kind of bumps up everyone. So your bad guys are also gonna bump up. This is a guy that you can just leave it whatever, and he's gonna do his thing because he's gonna steal a lot, which would be cool. But I also can't overlook that his fielding is just pretty piss poor. The range I don't care about because he'll be decently fast, and the range will get better. The arm, whatever, it'll be okay enough. I just kind of think he just reminds me of a guy I had back in the day, a guy who you and myself, Mizzy, I think we talked trade on him, thought we were close, we weren't close, and then just kind of blew up in my face was Albert Rumbo. Guy who, yeah, he could run like crazy, but his fielding was ass, and he's kind of like randomly stopped developing, and I don't know really whatever he came to be, but he looked good at one point. I certainly said good, but he looked all right. This is where I would say William. Okay.
Yeah, no, I do remember him books. A bunch of times I asked for him because he's one of those guys. I'm like, this is one of those guys that might be like a nice little buy low spark plug type guy. Never could quite get to a deal on him, and then you're right. He just randomly is like, and he like Jose Tabated it and just gave up, married an older woman, and started drinking. So it was just the most random mogul thing, but that kind of shit does happen.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember he was a guy. He had like what 4 or 5 upside left, and based on how he aged, I was like, yeah, he's gonna have like 2, maybe 3 years left to develop. And then one spring training came by, and then he was peaked.
Poof. Yeah. Gotta love those spring trains. Guys, you think I got a couple of years left, got a couple of what the fuck just happened?
And he had even already hit his window jump too, so I was really confident in that little bit of upside actually meant he had a couple of years to develop.
Yep. Goddamn mogul. It's really what it comes down to sometimes. Mets. Ain't that the truth, though? Mets, with another one of their many first-round picks, take their self-described first reach of the draft. I'm not sure if I would quantify that as a reach, but they took Bud Vittibald, a 16-year-old starting pitcher who is, again, right-handed, and has 54, 85 overall. Good fastball, good changeup, solid curve, high ground ball rate, good control, good power, and a movement just below. I like the look of this build for the most part. If the power is like 4 or 5 higher, it'd be my perfect build. It's not, and clearly, you're looking at the 50% ground ball rate that I'm circling with my cursor, like you can actually see me doing it. Says that he's should be a ground ball guy. 2 years there, home runs are a little bit high. And so I'm not thrilled by that. The strikeout to walker ratio is, again, about what you expect for a guy that's a ground ball pitcher. So I don't think it was a bad pick. He was definitely a guy that I'm like, you know what? If my guys are gone, 16, got a ground ball rate. Everybody goes goo for Cocoa Puffs over the goddamn ground ball rate. I'll take him. If he turns out, great. If he doesn't, fuck it. I'll flip him to somebody that has to have those ground ball rate guys, and we'll pay anything to get them. Is he going to be a superstar? Maybe not. But I don't know. I mean, I could definitely see him getting to mid to upper 80s, maybe with that control movement, maybe almost an 80s power even, or high 70s. Like, should be a darn good looking pitcher. And then again, drink for whoever has this on their FCM drinking bingo. You can't take the winter ball out of him. You get this guy gets a good winter ball jump. Suddenly he looks a lot better. And at 16 with probably plenty of time to develop, not a bad selection here, 12th in the draft.
I think this is another one kind of like with the Braves. The Mets have already kind of taken their top two guys. Not really sure if this was a true reach by Decker, or it was kind of like a thing of, my other targets before I could get them. So, fuck it, let's go with this guy. And if you're gonna say fuck it, let's go with this guy. Go with the 16-year-old. Because they're a year away. What?
Nothing.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say they're a year away from Gilly asking you about them, so you have that going for you. But and Mogul just can do some really weird things with the 16-year-old dudes, just like Gilly does with the 17-year-old dudes.
Nailing it.
And you look at the build. If you take everything else away, you take away the peak, the age, whatever not, I think that is a really good build. 64, 63, 53. Good, solid, strong endurance, and solid enough health. It's not real low health, not real high. Endurance, not real high, not real low. This is a guy who's going to be a 200-inning guy if he develops. And it's one of those guys of, he is so young. What's he going to develop into? This is easily a guy who could peak out in the 90s. And if he does, it's a really good pitcher.
Yeah, if he peaks out in the 90s, I mean, you're looking at a pitcher that some people before him are going to be like, shit, should have taken the 16-year-old. Things that you're legally not allowed to say in 49 states. Anyway, we will move on to picks 13 and 14 in the draft. This was another back-to-backer where Seattle has picks 13 and 14. And at 13, just to make things even more fun, Seattle took two guys named Tim. And the nicknames for both Tims are already in. So, 18-year-old left-handed pitcher Tim Ballmer is pick at 13. He's a guy that might have a home run problem, might not. I mean, there was 2 years there was a little bit high compared to his innings pitch. The strikeout to walkout ratio is pretty good. ERA is pretty good. Like, everything looks pretty solid. He's not going to be a ground ball pitcher. He's definitely a power pitcher. He's got 3 pitches above his overall, and 1 not too far behind his overall. Now, far enough above his overall? No, I would like to have seen him a little bit more above the overall, but still, I'll take 3 pitches above the overall. His health is high. His health is a 90, so that could be inflating his peak a little bit. And his endurance is, like I said, kind of where you almost want to see it, kind of in that low to mid 80s, so that's not a bad place. This is the type of build, again, that I like to see when I'm trying to develop pitchers.
He dropped.
Did drop, was it 1? I believe it was 1. So he dropped 1 point on his birthday. So I'm all in. I'm all in on a pitcher that's 18, dropped 1 point when he turned 18 on his birthday, and has a build like this. He was definitely, after Diller, my next pitcher on the draft board. So, and the fact that he fell to me made me very, very happy.
Yeah, I'm confused on him. I have him going from a 57.93 to a 57.92, but in my file he shows as a 58.93. I'm sure you're ecstatic because it's one of those weird post-draft things where they shift just a little bit.
Jesus, you are absolutely right, because and that's why I almost hesitated for a second there, because I in all my scoutings that I have him starting off on Sim 1 or Sim free agent, whatever, as a 57.93. going down to a 57.92 after his birthday, a 1 point drop. And you're right. Now, when I'm looking at the current most active file that we have that came out this afternoon, he's at 58.93. Again, mogul being mogul. So,
Yeah, but it's weird. Also, his attributes didn't change at all, at least as far as the control, power, and movement. The pitcher, if the pitches could have changed slightly. I have seen that just by little shifts here and there. But however, yeah, he's complete ass. 9 home runs in 57 innings. That's terrible. Um, I don't know what other things I can fake that I really hate him, because actually I think he's pretty solid. It's a pretty good build. I think this is one of the builds that I really started to like. The power is the lead attribute, slightly above the control, but not too much above it. And then of course the movement trailing behind both of them, but not too far behind that control. Um, he rated the number one player in my scouting system. That doesn't mean you made a really great pick. So calm down, leave that couch right where it is.
you mean don't drag it down to the front porch and set it on fire? Because I already did that. I'm trying to
Well,
channel my inner Percy today.
okay. Well, hopefully you can get a couple of men out of his basement.
I know. I really hope Stang goes on a rescue mission while he's down there taking a peek.
Good, good. But yeah, gonna be a solid guy. Gonna have solid control, a solid power, good movement. It'd be interesting to see if he really does have a long time to develop, or this isn't some weird mirage by the way of he aged and then a weird thing jumping back.
And then didn't age, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but saying that goes just like it should. This is a guy who I would be surprised if he peaks out before age 26. Long time to develop. So should be a good dude. I just hope for you for your sake. He's much like Ian Setton. Takes so long to develop that he can never be good. You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And now we'll move on to the pick that most people probably didn't like, and that is Tim Brame, 17-year-old right-handed relief pitcher. He is a gentleman that I think will probably be. Some people would argue that should be converted to a starter. I don't do that, though everybody probably forgets that, or not, because you shouldn't, because I don't fucking do that. I liked him. I like, I always take relief pitchers here in this top 15 spot, and I always get shit for it. And then I trade him a year later, and I don't want to, but I do it anyway because I like the guy that I'm getting back. Fuck, it is what it is. But I like Tim Brame. I thought he was the best reliever in the draft. He is young. He's 17. He turns 18, I believe, end of September. And I like it. I like the high control. He's got decent power. He's got solid movement. He's got two good pitches. Both a cutter and a slider, high ground ball rate. He delivers sidearm and he throws kind of light. Does have a high health, which again I think is probably inflating things a little bit. But I like to plan for the future, and I like a good closer. I know sometimes in the minority on that one. But I liked him. I thought his numbers looked pretty good. His strikeout to walkout ratio, great, this big spider. Lower home runs, even though again he's a relief pitcher. I don't know exactly how that's going to go, but oh shit, where'd it go? And great, into my sandal. Shit. Anyway, sorry. Stomping on a spider and scaring the shit out of myself at the same time. I like him. Not everybody else is going to do it. That's fine. I took him. There was another guy that we'll talk about here in a little bit that I also really was thinking about in this pick, but I'm happy with the guy that I got.
Yeah, I think if I was going to do the draft grades, he'd be an easy 3-star grade, probably on the low side of the 3-star, just because I don't believe in taking a non-elite reliever this high in the draft. However, if I'm going to go beyond all that, shitting on him, I will say, he got good control. I definitely would not convert him to a starter. So I know you're thinking about it, Mizzy, but do not convert him to a starter.
To be fair, I
can talk you out of
do
it.
the opposite way with all my guys. There's actually a guy I drafted much later in the draft that I've already converted to a reliever because that's what I do.
Well, just in case you are thinking about it, don't convert him. But in all seriousness, on that little subject there, I'll just go off on the bunny trail. Even me, who I have in the past really like to convert relievers on the new versions of Mogul, I like to wait as long as possible before I convert them, simply because you can never get that low endurance back, and I think that is key for your late inning relievers, because Mogul can just screw around if they say, "Oh, hey, I have a 48 endurance closer or a 40 endurance setup man. Cool, I can just go use him for 2 1/3 innings for whatever stupid reason I feel like." But anyways, so Brain, solid dude, has upside. The one thing that I like, and probably why I really just worry about taking what I would see as a non-elite reliever this high, is just because of how Mogul can just screw with the development with relievers. I mean, it's like you could have two guys with the same exact build, same exact age, all of that. One guy develops pretty close to what to how you expect it. The other guy just does the complete exact opposite. Control never develops. Movement just skyrockets, and you're left wondering, well, what the hell happened? This guy should have been an easy 80 con, con, control guy, and he winds up as like a 72 control guy with 85 movement, and because the control's so low, he just sucks.
It is a concern, especially a guy that is under 50 on draft day. All these things went through my mind. And again, there was another guy that I was really considering with this pick, but for reasons I will go over later, I didn't. I took this guy instead, and I'm going to live with that decision until I die by that sword, which happens on occasion. I'm, for some reason, not always right, shocking as it is. LA picked next. They took another left-handed starting pitcher, as shocking as that may be. Dave Teague goes next. He is a guy that typically I don't like this build, to be honest with you. So he's a lefty that is going to be a high control, decent power, okay movement kind of guy by the looks of it. He's a 66-92 with 77 control, 67 power, 64 movement. So his power is should not pace. His control should be the highest, and the movement should somewhere be behind. For a lefty, even for righties, I find these guys to be teases sometimes. Like, they're guys that look like they should be really, really good, and then they end up being whoever that asshole I have on my team now that is just fucking terrible. I can't for the life of me remember his name. Von Roglin. So for all the guys you get that you want to say, oh, this might be the next Samuel Zunga, you get instead Von Roglins. And I don't know about him. His home runs seem to be decent. Strikeout to walkout seems to be pretty decent. Like, everything looks to be pretty solid and pretty kind of where you want it. But for some reason, he is a guy that I don't know how I feel about him. Is he going to get to that, mid 90s control with 90s movement? Maybe even 80s power. He could, and if he does, he could be a darn good pitcher. But does he? 19 years old, as we sit here today, has a birthday at the end of the season, so he will turn 20. I don't know. Who does he end up being? I have a guy on my team right now, Lee Cirillo, that I think is he gets that kind of vibe for me, and he was a guy that I waffled on getting in trade or not for a while there. So there are guys that if they turn out, they can be quite good. If they miss, they can be quite blah. So it'll be very interesting to see which direction he ends up going. So Jermaine's talking about a guy like Og. Yeah, okay, so we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So, Maddie, why don't you talk about this and then start with the next pick? I'll be back in about 20 seconds.
Yeah, so I do see the Og situation here, and I will say, even if you think you're going to get a Samuel Zuniga, I think I would just say I pray for you, because Zuniga, as often as he was really good, he could be equally as just mediocre. Like, just as often he would get a 3.0 ERA, he'd get a 4.0 ERA, just like he did with Seattle. And I know Mizzy's not here to hear that, but there we go. And he's just a guy, you think, oh, he has all that control and he's going to be really good. But being that it's a 13-point difference from his movement, and he is already a 66 overall. That's advanced. That's going to be a concern. The home runs, they're not as big of an issue as someone could think because of the innings are higher. The only season that's actually high is the freshman year, and that's ever so slightly. But again, you can say that 6-2 our movement, that could be a concern. Sure, maybe a little bit. The real big concern I would say would be the 35% ground ball rate, which when he's not a power pitcher, that should really suggest something. And I think it'd really be more in with he's going to get beat up with the hit because his senior year goes up a 302 batting average, presumably 64 movement. I don't think you should be doing that when you have 64 movement. That tells me something. I would say probably a little bit better than Og, but along those lines, definitely.
All right, and that was Dave Teague. I keep wanting to say David, but it is Dave. Dave Teague. Moving on to pick 16. Pick 16 was the Marlins, who took Bill Green, another 16-year-old pitcher. Looks like a typical MZ Hokie GD pick. This guy has power out the ass. So at 53.90 with 70 power, 35% ground ball rate, huge fastball, solid, good curve, good two-seamer. Control is just 4 above his overall, and movement is at his overall. So again, younger guy, I don't like to see control that close to the overall in the power pitcher, but he's 16. The more I've kind of tracked and looked at draft day power pitchers and how they might develop, how they do develop, the younger they are, the little bit less worried I get about control and overall being that close together. But it is still something I'm concerned about. So he was a guy that he was kind of like a last resort kind of guy on my draft board, just because I really don't think the control, even with him being 16, is going to get to where you want it to be. This just feels like one of those guys that's going to end up like that guy that went to Toronto, what did it go, or New York, and then jumped. The guy that Hokie had for years, that lefty that he was trying to trade, and nobody fucking wanted him. Then he traded him finally for basically nothing. And then Valenzuela, I think, or something like that. And Baji, thank you, Mike. That's what it was, is Baji. And again, now magically jumped. Those vitals didn't change at all. Now he's like a 91 or 92 or some shit like that. But still pitching like he pitches much better than he should. But with that control, you don't want to chance it. And again, especially considering that Florida is very much a pitcher's park, they make bad pitchers look good. So, and good pitchers look great. Don't get me wrong, but he's just a guy that kind of reminds me of that type of build. And because of that, even with his much de-advanced age, a guy that I was shying away from a little bit.
See, now I actually really like this guy. This is the first guy that really caught my eye when I was scouting. I mean, because as you might know, I think you have pretty much the same scouting profile that I do. He projects mid-70s control and then 90s power and movement. It's very interesting to me, especially since he's a 16-year-old, and 16-year-olds have a tendency to get much better than their projection. This could, I guess, probably the big thought that I had was this could be another Kevin Lester type. If you look back at him, he's a guy who he went through a couple teams. I know I got him from Philadelphia, and he was damn good for me for a few years, and I did whatever I did with him. Went to Kansas City after that, but it looks like probably a type A type of thing based on the contract that he signed. So there was obviously a thought that he was very, very good. And then it looks like he died relatively quickly after he signed his free agent contract, but nonetheless, a guy who could be very top of the line starter for at least a handful of years, 5-6 years. And if he becomes more than that, that's awesome. But if you can get that, I think that's what you want in your picks. 5-6 years that are really good. Anything beyond that is the sugar on top.
This is the gravy, yeah. No, I think that's a good point. I mean, I always try to draft for guys that are going to be around for decades. It never works. It's obviously a pipe dream. Every time I click yes, trade, or every time I hit enter and pick that guy. But those are always my hopes and dreams. But I think that's a much better thing to look for. 5 to 6 good years, and then whatever else you get after that, awesome.
Right,
I
that's
like
why I
like
like.
in there with Hans Makakakio. He's a guy that you're right. He could end up looking very similar to that guy who had a winter ball jump. I don't know what it was, but look at him, and that's just a pitcher that I know Milwaukee likes. They have him in the rotation. I don't. He's not a guy that I like. Again, the lower control for me. It's just a thing that I have to draw a line somewhere. And a guy that has a 72 control right now and clearly is pitching like that in the mid to upper fours. I cannot really get on board with that type of pitcher. But again, like Marty said, things can change. Things develop a little bit differently. He's 16. He's got room to grow. See what happens. So, do you have anything else on him, Matty, or you want to move on to the next guy?
Not much more than that, but just I was added on the trade stuff. You know, you get some years out of them, and that's pretty much what you're looking for. I think that's what kind of like where I draft. I don't worry about if this guy I think maybe might um start dropping early. If you have those builds like that shortstop build that has just shown that pretty much as soon as they peak out at 24, 25, they start dropping. Yeah, that's something to consider. But to think that, oh, I might only have this guy from 25 to 29, well, let's hope that those are some 5 really good years and go for it. Anything
Those,
else is just gravy. It's kind of like I would say, I think Gene Money has said he's never drafted a Hall of Famer, but yeah, he's always had some pretty damn good team. He drafts well, doesn't worry about if I'm gonna get a guy for decade plus. Get me a guy for, like I said, 5, 6 years. Get as much as I can out of him, and then when I'm done with him, toss him to free agency.
yeah, especially if you could toss him to free agency at the point where you're going to get something back in return, whether it's a comp A or comp B. Recouping a little bit of that, just it keeps the train rolling. So it's not a bad strategy whatsoever if you can manage it. Next pick, another first baseman off the board. This is the first baseman that I liked a little bit more than the last one, and this is Arnie Scudamore. Arnie Scudamore, 19-year-old left-handed hitting first baseman, goes with his very next pick in the draft at number 17 to the Mets. Surprise, surprise, the Mets with another one of their top 20 picks. He's a guy that I don't know if he's going to be a home run hitter. I think he might be more of a doubles than a home run hitter, but he'll still hit a fair amount of home runs. Should have a good OPS, should have a good average. I like the dude. He's got a good eye. He's got good contact. He's got solid power. He is a guy that I was a fan of. He was definitely a guy that I was really looking to get pitchers with my early picks. But if I couldn't get a pitchers, there was a couple hitters that I was looking at, and he was one of them. He was a guy that, again, I don't know how he'll develop. I don't know how he'll turn out. I know he has a birthday early in September, but I like this pick. I like what he could become, and I think he could become a darn good hitter if things go well for him. And even if they don't, he should be a very solid hitter. I mean, this is a guy that probably gets to the 90s, maybe even mid 90s with contact. I'd think with decent power and a good eye. I'll take this hitter. I'll take this hitter and put him in my lineup any day of the week.
I hate him.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate him. I mean, I see the idea here. I think the idea is maybe if you get an Archiega, it's a very good pick. But for me, I'd never pick assuming that I'm going to get an Archiega because that development was insane, and where he peaked out is insane, and his production is insane.
And if
Where
that was
he
to trade for Archiega, who's now available, I've never heard one.
Yeah. So I don't know if I just up the value on Scudamore or what.
Well,
I
you're
really
not
don't
you're not,
even.
you're not Andy, so we probably didn't move the needle at all for people. If Andy
Probably not.
said that, then the needle would skyrocket like a cartoon, where the thing would bust
But
and blow up red.
if people have it in the last 15 seconds, I would say it could be worth to go back and compare both of their draft day builds to see where they are. But what I see is this. I see the guy who has a terrible, terrible eye, low walks and low Ks. That is just a death nail for him. No, I do not want that. Especially when you do not have power. The his contact is going to far overtake his power. Um, and I would agree with my projections where it's going to be um, a mid-90s contact. Good, very, very good. That is a definite plus. But the power is going to peak out in the mid to low 80s. Bad, not good. In the eye, low 80s, but it's going to be, again, it's going to be that very low K, pretty low walks. He'll walk a little bit more than where he is now, obviously, because that's how development works. But nothing to be amazed by. I mean, he will definitely be batting average driven. He'll have to hit for a very high average for him to be valuable. And on the years that he doesn't, he won't have the power or the walk ability to make up for it.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I know I definitely didn't see Arch in him, and like when I looked at him, I'm like, no, I don't see Arch. I see maybe more of a Colin McCartier than I do an Arch. But again, a player that I think is a solid, good hitter. And for me, it might be a little bit different than other people. Seattle loves lefties, lefty hitters especially. I've made bad lefty hitters win MVPs after I take them off Peter. So he's definitely a guy that I like because I think he really fits my park. Not necessarily because he's the greatest thing since Arch or whoever other lefty first baseman that just kind of took off and got really good. So we'll see.
Well, picture theory says he is not McCartier. I will say that.
I don't attune to picture theory. I know that Mike's thrown out Fred Sloan as a comp. I feel like Fred Sloan's probably a solid comp. Though I do think that this guy might have a bit more control, like Matty, or contact. Excuse me.
Yeah,
like
probably. I would say that Fred Sloan with more contact, less power.
So Fred Sloan, yeah, more contact, less power. So yeah, so somewhere in there.
Wooey is what I say to that.
Yeah, I like it. I like to see how it goes. Next pick was Milwaukee. Milwaukee took Eduardo Fernandez, not Fernandez, but Fernandez, 17-year-old power righty. Let's just get the cat out of the bag early on this one. This is the guy that I was thinking of. There was when I said there was 3 guys left on my board before Jason picked at 10. After which went at 9, it was this. He was the third musketeer. For me, it was between Fernandez and then the Timbits that I picked. So I liked him quite a bit. Again, obviously, considering I was thinking of taking him at 14. But there was a couple red flags, and this isn't going to be news to Rocket because him and I had talked about it, I believe, after I picked at 14 and when he took him at. Just a couple things. I know if Gilly were on tonight, he would complain about them only having 2 pitches. He has a good fastball and solid curve. That's it. Again, 17, he should develop another pitch. Again, health, higher. Apparently all the guys I liked this year had high health, which could inflate that overall a little bit, or that peak, a little bit. And again, the control is pretty close to the overall. It's 4 above, and the power is only 5 above, and the movement's only 1 below. So it's not quite the spread that I like to see on power pitchers that I want to draft. Home runs, that last season were 10 over 67 innings, not ideal. 7 over 70, again, I'm okay with that in my power pitchers. Most people aren't going to like that. And the strikeout to walkout ratio was not ideal. First 2 years, it was basically 1-to-1. Then it got slightly better the next year, and then slightly better the year after that. So I mean, it looks like it is progressing, but so were the home runs a little bit. So he was a guy that I really did like, still do like, but there was just too many red flags, too many concerns for me, which is why I went in a different direction at 14.
Is this the guy that we talked about? You said.
Yes.
Like
what about this guy? When I talk about the 2 guys. We were talking about the 2 guys that I picked, and I was like, randomly said, "What about this guy?" Because this was the other guy I was thinking about. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, we definitely hit it on. I think we hit the nail on the head there. That guy already jumped. I think it's almost twofold though. He jumped, so he's out of the 50s because guys kind of seem to linger in the 50s forever. We want them to get out of the 60s, but also that peak jumped only a point or two, which is however Mogul says that
You went from
93 peak is.
54.92 to a 63.93 or whatever. I know that there's wiggle room there at times.
Yeah, there's the Mogul counting involved. So Mogul math, if you're told there's no math in this, well, fuck, Clay just really fucked you over in this version of Mogul, but he fucks you even more in the future version. So you should be happy with this version. Anyways, if you take him, what it looks like, he has a very appealing build on draft day. Again, the power is the lead the lead vital. Control just a little bit behind. I think you will want that a little bit more behind. And then, of course, the movement is the very last one. The two pitches. So Gilly doesn't like two pitchers. Is that why I got Lee for a really sweet deal?
Yes, I think so. And as I told you, if you had said no to my deal, I was totally flipping that same second he used to get Lee because I'd take my chances on him. But I'm pretty sure he's the one that's been all against the two-pitch pitchers recently.
This is a lot more inside stuff this you'll have no idea about. But yeah, Jason Lee, yeah, I got him. So that's the thing. If you can follow along with that, Mizzy was going to get him if I did. Anyways, yeah, the two pitch. I really wouldn't worry about that, especially look at what Lee did in a couple of sims. I already had to kind of call him up in an emergency, and of course he can, as Fernandez, because it's not a Fernandez. That is stupid, Clay. Anyways, he can develop a third pitch at some point. That's not out of the question, especially him being 17 years old. I would kind of place my bets on he will. Where I would kind of worry is, again, the control is going to overtake the power. He's going to be more of I don't know, you say a balanced-ish build. He's not going to be a power guy in the end, and that his ground ball rate is low. The 10 home runs, you'd really have to go back to that again, like I said before, the March 1st file to see where Mogul put those stats in, because the stats were not put in a student movement. I'll guarantee you that. They put whatever he was when he was a 54. So this is a decent pitcher, kind of like I said to you. Mizzy is a decent pitcher, but that jump just kind of made him wasn't as good of a jump as what you would want. But again, I think if you look at this, just kind of think about this. If you take him as a 63 overall with 67 control and 68 power, do you like that? You know nothing else about that. Do you like that? I think the answer is yes. So I don't think you can hold it against him too much. You can definitely say the health could be an issue because it's high. But at the same time, if his health is, say, 65 and he's hurt all the time, you bitch about it. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. He's a guy, if he does develop and becomes a major league player, it's going to be a guy you're going to be able to put in your rotation for 220 innings, 210, 220 innings every year. He's not going to miss a start. That's got to be worth something, too.
No, and again, I think that there was a lot of positives there for me, but there was just a couple negatives that made me just decide to go a different direction. But yeah, I like the pick. I think you're right, especially if you could count on him going out to throw 200 innings for that 5 to 6 year window. You're all in on that. Even if he pitches it at a higher 3 or a lower 4, you're probably still okay with it. We'll see how he develops. The weirdest jump aside. We'll see how that goes. So we will move on to another double pick. Atlanta picks twice in a row, and their first pick was 18-year-old right-handed pitcher Alex Lacede. He was a dude that I don't remember if I had him on my list, but I don't think I liked him. I'm trying to remember. So just looking at him, I mean, he walked more than he struck out 3 of his 4 high school seasons. His home runs, high. I'm going to say high. I hate to say high, but because I generally don't like using that, but I think it is. I mean, you're looking at 9 over 50 innings or 8 over 50 innings. That's not. I'd call that a little bit high. I'll call it a little bit high just to be that. But it's got a 50% ground ball rate, but his number one stat is power. I don't know how to unpack this pitcher. I think that was part of the reason maybe why I was just not. He just gave me one of those weirdish like vibes. It's like, okay, and I just kind of moved on from him. Also, the fact that he is a 49.88 again. I drafted a 48, so don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I could see that he might be that control then power then movement build, which I do like that build. There was it was Dave's Petra, Marty McLaughlin, I think, had that build and was very good with that build. So I mean, if that's the kind of build that he ends up with, and he can get to that Marty McLaughlin type level, then you're thrilled with this pick. I'm just concerned that he doesn't quite get there. I'm concerned that he doesn't end up with good control, doesn't end up with good power, and just becomes one of those movement monsters that you see not as much in this file, but in some other files where they're just all movement and nothing else, and you're just like, well, fuck it, let's see if he can be a reliever. Like I just, I don't know. I don't think I like him. I'm gonna leave it with that. I don't think I like him.
So basically, what I hear is you are a believer of my scout file because that's exactly what that suggests that he is. However, he is extremely raw, extremely underdeveloped. No idea what he's going to develop into, really. I mean, this is one of these builds that we can all say, oh, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And the mogul gods are just rubbing their hands together, kind of like the used car salesman that Mizzy is, and says, you know what? I'm going to do this with this motherfucker. And just makes him a star, and no one really sees it. Because, and I say no one, and I mean no one, because I don't even think Stein can legitimately say he sees him being a star. I don't know. Maybe he does have a build picked out. He sees you know, a a former player of where he's going to be that. If he's that, great. I'll give him credit for it. But other than that, no, this is just an extreme. Hey, he has a shit ton of upside. The build isn't complete ass. The health and endurance aren't extremely high. The movement is, or the ground ball rate is high. So yeah, I'm just gonna just say that guy and see what happens. Because I think that's what it is. It's just screw it, roll the dice, see what happens. If you're right, this is a great pick. If you're wrong, well, again, you have 589 other picks to fall back onto.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think again, there's just too much weirdness with him that I just anyway. Moving on to his next pick. Next pick, he took 17-year-old third baseman Matt Daly, and this is a guy that I liked. This is a guy that I think has pretty solid defense right now, and I'm gonna guess as it grows could be pretty good defense. And an interesting type of bat. Obviously, he has his number one vital right now is speed. He's not going to be a speed guy. Shocking, I know. But he should have good contact. Should have some power. Eye is lagging behind. I don't think the eyes can be much of anything. And as somebody pointed out to me recently, you really like high eye guys. I guess I have a type, and I guess it's not brown or blue eyes. I guess it's just high eyes. So, or as we could call them, PR eyes. Anyway, I like him. I thought out of some of the positional players, he was probably one of the better positional players potentially in the draft. The one thing that did make me steer away from him a little bit, again, the power numbers don't really shine through, and the average isn't really shining through too much either, and the OPS is, dare I say, abysmal. You have 2 seasons in the sixes and 2 seasons well the fuck below that. So again, 17, I know, but for whatever reason, he was a guy that, while I did like and think that he has some pretty good potential, I'm just not sure that he ends up being that guy that you really want him to be. I think he'll be a good defensive guy. I think he should have some pretty solid contact. It's just the rest of it that I question.
Yeah, I really didn't like this guy at all. Um, I don't know, whatever. I'll just say it because it doesn't really matter. It's post draft, but this was SXR's um, number 2 guy at 15. So at least Stang wasn't completely on an island for liking this guy at around this area. I think for me, for third baseman, you either need to hit a lot and have okay defense, like I think Daly has, or have really damn good defense. Do one or the other. Either hit for a lot or not, whatever a lot, because that doesn't happen in our league with third base. By a lot is like a 750 um OPS. I don't think he'll do either, especially because you mentioned his eye is complete ass for throwing walks. It is the penultimate low walk, low K guy. He just will not throw a walk to save his life. And of course, that does also inflate his contact, and the power isn't really good. I don't know that it'll hit all that much, and his defense will just be, it'll be okay, be tolerable for third base, but nothing great.
Yeah, I think that's right up with him too. It's just he'll be a big bag of average, which again, for a lot of people, for a third baseman in this league, not the worst thing to have. But yeah, really good at one and okay at the other. I think most people might prefer that. But again, everybody plays a little bit differently. So moving on to our next pick, we are at Cincinnati at pick 21. Cincinnati picked a lot higher than 21, but due to reasons, slipped down to this position, which now, as I was thinking about a minute ago, like how the fuck did Stang get up that far? I swear he was in the low 20s. Now I remember that a couple of people got skipped. So Theo was one of those picks. I'm not sure if he ended up popping on or not. I was not at the draft. I was in and out of the draft, but not really paying attention. I was at work today.
I don't think he even knows that he took Marcel.
There it is. So, well, he took Marcel, or Marcel Davis, I guess as we'll call him, who was a shocker left-handed pitcher, who is a guy that's most people are going to look at and go, "Oh, Theo, I'm sorry." Like, I'd say that he's a guy that probably most people had as the first auto pick of the draft. Just due to the fact that he's a 76-93, which people are like, oh, okay, 76-93. And then you look at his vitals at 67, 73, 73, and you go, oh, well, that's a little weird. And it is a little weird for a guy that's 20 years old and will turn 21 in the middle of September. Got a good fastball, got two other pitches that are kind of meh. And I'm going to just go out on a limb and assume that your scouting file, Matty, probably does not like this pitcher. Just because he's like that guy that I just talked about a minute ago that we don't tend to see a lot, those movement monsters, where they're just all movement and nothing really else, and you go, oh, that is unfortunate. I feel like this is that pick potentially, that pick that nobody really wanted, but whoever wasn't going to be there was going to end up getting, or somebody in the mid to late seconds like, fuck it, give them to me. I'm going to hope for the best. Maybe I could flip them for something decent in a year or two. So you got to have them dropped on your lap in the mid-20s after being skipped out of the teens. Probably not the best look.
Yeah, I mean, it's cute that you say it like that, like you'd already know what he projects to, because you want me to read it off. So yeah, he projects as 75 control.
Do you want me to take a guess? Because I can take a guess. I'm going to guess 75 control, 79 to 80 power. I'm sorry, 79 to 80 power, yeah, and then like mid 80s movement, like 84, 85 ish.
Let me check. Yeah. Pretty much exactly that. Because why? Because he already jumped.
He already jumped, but why?
Yeah.
That's not that's Nam. Let me go back here. Davis went from a 67-90 to a 76-93.
Yeah, and those kind of big overall jumps, those usually are met with big time peak drops. This could be a guy who, I don't know if I'm just playing the odds on this, seeing his age, I think he'd be a guy who could peak out at 22 or 23.
Yeah.
That's not going to look good. That's a Trojan Ends Boner of the Month award pick here. I know you could say Theo didn't really make the pick, but yeah, he did. And the fact that he didn't show up or really do anything, could have done something to maybe let Andy know or someone know that He's in distress, can't make a pick.
Yeah.
Hey, pick a control guy, pick a control pitcher for me. Give me an outfielder for me. Give me, something that's not complete ass. If you do that, if you just tell Andy, hey, give me a guy, the best guy you think is decent. If you can get to it pre-draft, I'm gonna guess he'd give you something that's decent, not shitty.
Yeah, and it just something like that happens. Like, I mean, he was on mid last week for a little bit here and there, so I mean, it's one of those things you just hope everything's okay. Because typically, a guy like Theo, he's typically around for the draft, or at least try something. So, when guys that aren't typically just ghost, you hope everything's okay. But yeah, it's a no for me, dog. Like, this is just not a good pick, regardless of what happened. Just woof.
Yeah, it's just here, and I guess the next big is our new guy. Maybe it's kind of a wake up call. In this league, it's still kind of befuddles probably all of us that there are a couple of people who just don't get it that on draft weekend. We're serious. We're moving ahead. We're doing our shit. And come 11 a.m. draft morning, it is games on. Go for it. Especially, of course,
especially this year,
draft.
Andy had stuff going on, so.
Don't fuck around.
I feel like we made him proud today. And by we, I mean I fucked off. Like, I sent him a list. And here was my list, Andy. I sent him a list of, I think, 14 dudes for my late third round picks. And then at the end of it said, hey, when all those fuckers are gone because everybody drafts too good, just take the best peak guy who's the youngest. It's that simple. Would I've gotten probably shit guys? Probably. But I'll take young shit guys and hope for the best. It's that simple, guys. When you send in a list, honestly, just take the best peak, the highest peak by youngest, because you're gonna get the highest peak anyway, not being there. So you might as well ask for the youngest guy too, and just hope for the fucking best.
Right, exactly. I mean, because as I had here on the pod, a little bit of an issue. Apparently, I went blank for a while. My internet was going in and out this morning. So when I got back on, they said, "Hey, Andy, quickly, here's my list in case things go awry." Like, I don't know. I think more people should probably send in lists as a backup, but just tell Andy, "Hey, I plan on being there, but in case I don't, here it is." That'll tell Andy, ding, 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 this dude should show up on my list. However, should he not, here's a backup plan. That's all you got to do. It's not difficult. Really not.
It shouldn't be. And again, life is what life is, but I try to make things a little bit easier, because I remember the one year I sent Andy the most convoluted list, because in my crazy mind, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. And apparently it was just dog shit, because Andy got us like, what?
Yes, I would say definitely with lists. Sometimes I have had one, again, probably the same thing where Andy kind of messed it up. I was a little upset, and I kind of looked back at it and said, well, yeah, I said, well, this, if this, and no, just straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
These are the guys that I want.
Simple list, folks. Trust me. I've run a couple drafts over in NAM to help Dave and other people out at times. And the simpler the list, the easier it can go.
I'll say, do not give too much information.
No.
I would say position, player name, maybe the peak overall. Other than that, don't include your scores on him, your notes on him. Just
and that's what I did.
Make it more issue.
Like, if you take the second baseman and this other second baseman's there, don't take him, but take the shortstop. If the shortstop's not there, it was so convoluted that when I thought about it after that, I'm like, I'm surprised he didn't fucking just fire me from the league on that alone. It was bad. It really was. But again, we digress. We will move on to the new guy, Breeze's pick, and that is Steve Latangue, a 17-year-old relief pitcher. And again, like we were saying before we got sidetracked, which is easy to do, because there's only two of us. This league is something different. This league is, you got a lot of guys that on draft weekend, if they're not sending a list, and they're there, they're ready. They're, for the most part, hyper vigilant. They know who they want. They know when they want them. A lot of things go into it. And then, so sometimes when we do get new guys going and they don't realize how particular or persnickety people get over the draft time, it can cause some confusion. So, Breeze kind of walked into the draft like a dolphin into a school of sharks. It's just like, oh fuck, I shouldn't be here. Like, that's the kind of. And again, I wasn't really in the draft. I was just mildly paying attention as I was doing my work crap. But that's just what it appeared to be to me. And could be why he went out and got Steve Latangue, not the Steve Latangue. Tengu is not a
I
necessarily.
love your pronunciation on names.
I
It's
just
like over difficult when it's
something
yeah,
easy.
I don't know.
I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go French Canadian on this one. I'm gonna go.
Lantigu,
I just fucking make it up as I
Lantigu, whatever you want to say. Oh
Lantigu.
wait, he's Dominican, so why is
What?
it Steve? It should be yeah, that's
Oh,
weird.
bullshit.
Lantigue, Lantigu.
It's French, so I'm right.
It
It's
almost
definitely
sounds French.
it is French.
Whatever.
Lantigu. I was okay. Fuck it. Anyway, moving on. Um, I mean, this is I could see why a lot of people might like this pick. If especially if you were a starter, which he's not, and I'm not saying tournament starter. For the love of God, please don't stop flipping relievers to stars, folks. Just stop. If I keep beating this drum, you'll all start listening to me eventually. But 17 years old, definitely a high ground ball right now, and I'm pretty sure we know that Breeze likes those ground ball right pitchers. I mean, look at a guy that's 47, 87, 80, 48, 87. Good God, excuse me. Power's not going to go anywhere, which could be an issue for a reliever. If he doesn't hit that kind of that threshold of, I think we said it at 70 or at least mid 60s last draft. Not sure if he's going to get there or not. But the control movement with the good ground ball rate, good fastball, good changeup. Yeah, I mean, he looks like he should be a pretty solid pitcher. His stats look atrocious for some reason. Home runs look low, walkout the right ratios where it is, but his ERA is bloated as fuck. And I'm not sure if that's because his vitals weren't that high or his overall was so low. I don't know. But I mean, just look at the vitals and the stuff that we typically look at there. Doesn't look like a terrible pick. Not the pick I would have made here myself. And again, I know I'm well aware that I took a reliever at 14, but I'm not sure if it's going to be a bad pick, but maybe there were better picks left on the board.
Well, I'll say this is an interesting pick because I look at it. I have on my draft file that he started out as a 47-88, and he jumped and then AIDS, and now is a 48-87. So you jumped 1 point in the 40s. I don't know if I've ever seen that before in my life. And then you lost 1 point peak. It's just weird. Yeah, but he is really young. I really do not like that his control and movement are the exact same. Just on draft day, I don't know what it was on the March 1st file. That could have been a little different, which maybe it does affect a little bit, but whatever. Of course, so that would suggest that my scout file really overinflates that movement, that the control will not be good. The power is nearly not good at all. Not good power for a reliever. Of course, like I said, the movement will be ecstatic. But again, Mogul says, this guy's a reliever. Let's kind of do this with him instead. You really have no idea what he's going to do. But I would just think that, again, I would really kind of err on the side of my scout file to say that the movement will highly develop over the control, and he will be like a what was the guy I had, like Alberto Berea or something. I don't know, GB, if you're ever listening, I think you had him for a little bit. I know I got him from War Priest. I thought, oh, this is a guy, excellent movement. Doesn't have good control, but he has above 70. And his power is not good, but hey, that movement, he won't give up home run. Well, it doesn't matter if you walk 4 guys every single fucking inning. You're going to give up runs, and that's what that guy did, and that's what I think Lentugue will do. I'm just, not a bad guy to take a chance on maybe the second round, but I think it's just a little too early.
Yeah, I think I'd agree that it's probably, I'd call it a reach pick. But again, new guy, he'll learn. It's for whatever, sadly or not sadly, this is very much a sink or swim kind of league. So St. Louis goes next. St. Louis takes a pitcher that they don't normally take. So I'm going to guess that GD was not in the draft or sent in the list, or he's changing his stripes. Not sure. But another guy that I would probably not touch the 10-foot pole, but we'll see. Andy Teeters, 19-year-old left-handed starting pitcher, 75-93 with a 67-67-75. Not the kind of vitals I want to see personally myself. He's got a good fastball, got a solid curveball, got an okay changeup. Doesn't look to be a ground ball pitcher. looks to be that kind of typical average pitcher. His stats were quite good. His stats were almost scary good. So, have low home runs, good strikeout to walk ratio. His stats looked really good. So I don't know what I feel about him. I know I am 90% sure he did not have a little yellow mark next to him on my list. I do not think I had him as a guy to kind of eye up and look over. So again, I'm gonna go no. I'm gonna stick to it this time. I'm not gonna waffle. Apparently, like I was just doing a Breeze's pick. I am not going to. I'm not going to approve this pick. I'm not a fan of Mr. Teeters. That being said, his nickname should be Hannah, or is it Hannah? Whatever that supermarket is down in Virginia. And doesn't matter. Somebody knows what it is. That should be his nickname.
See, now I think his nickname should be Balls and, or Sucks Balls and. So that's probably where he's going to be. But I'm really interested. You do yellow colors. I do green guys. That is very, very interesting.
I do yellow. If I like a guy on my list, I put a little I either color coded him yellow or put a yellow dot next to him.
You black him out if you don't like him.
Yeah, basically.
I don't. Red thing is.
I don't want to see their name. Reds are guys that are already picked.
A red guy is. Right now.
I don't. I assume that he was an auto.
Yeah, he is an auto. That's what I'm saying. If you think he was actually a GD pick, you need to just. I know I said drink the Kool-Aid. That's a little different. I was thinking just kill yourself. So just drink the antifreeze and be done with it. It's not a GD pick.
Jonestown movies a couple times.
I really made the really deep Jonestown joke, and I don't know if everyone really knows and gets it. Anyways, you did good job. Guy kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Let's see. Going back to the projections, a little bit better than Marcel Davis because he hasn't jumped, but not good. High 80s or high 70s control, mid 70s power, 90s movement. So the movement should get there, which I would definitely agree with that with the opponent's batting average, but not a guy that I think GD is going to be happy with, but it's GD, so guess what? He's going to just develop the fuck out of him and see what he can get out of him.
Yeah, let's be fair. I love
He'll be his long reliever, and he won't give a fuck.
Yeah, no, I love the GD method of I draft players occasionally. Like once a decade, I'll trade somebody, and I just draft and keep my own players. It's a fun method.
Yeah, it is very cool that we have people that have all the different methods. We have the guys who are like GD draft, and I do not trade. And we have GB who draft. I want to trade, but fuck everyone else. So I guess I'm a draft and
free agency. GB's a free agency monster.
And then we have someone like Fred who is you got to strike. You got to catch him when he's striking the right mood to trade a guy, or you won't trade a guy. Yep. Sometimes he will, and then we have other guys like you, which honestly you kind of cooled down a lot.
I had to. I was winning the other way.
But it's trading a guy like every other hour. I just got this guy. You want this guy? Hey, I got this guy. You want this guy? And we have a lot of different guys. Guys who like power builds. Guys who like the movement control builds, the ground ball rates, the power guys, the contact hitters, all that kind of shit. It's pretty cool that we have a pretty good mix of stuff. It kind of helps out for if GD finds out he really doesn't want this guy, he's probably going to have a market for him somewhere. It'll just be about if he goes after it.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, so moving on to, is this right? Is this the Blue Jays again? Do my eyes deceive me? No, they do not. It is the Blue Jays again. I'm assuming this is the draft pick they got in the junior trade. And they took Andres Galarraga, a 20-year-old right-handed first baseman, who's your typical power eye first baseman. I call him a first baseman because I'm being nice. I mean, he should play first baseman just fine, but he would probably be just as safe if that's safer DH. I like the bat. I mean, he's a guy that in his amateur numbers has put up big OPS, put up good home run numbers with low doubles. So he's clearly going to be a pure power hitter. Average is a little bit low, which is clear with the 59 contact. That is a 58 versus righties and a 62 versus lefties. So, but again, you get him for the power eye combo. You get him for the power eye combo, and you want him to just hit home runs. You don't care if he hits 220, 240. 240 be a godsend. You love 240. You don't care if he hits 220, because the amount of home runs you're hoping and projecting that he hits makes up for it. And let's be fair. I mean, if he was a lefty bat, he would have gone probably 12 picks ago, 13 picks ago. He would have gone a while ago. Being a righty, he slips down to this we'll call it the MZ spot. MZ likes to take a lot of guys in this range, the power eye righties, and then he just sits on them and develops them, and everybody's like, fuck, how did we miss them? They were there. They were righty, so you ignored them. So I like this a lot better than his last pick. I'm not sure if this was another one of those picks that was I don't know. I'm assuming he made his own picks. I wasn't there. I do apologize for that, but not really. So the only problem I have with him, he had a 4-point birthday drop. That is not ideal. It's not a killer either, but it's definitely not ideal. So, if he gets up into those 90s for power in eye, and his contact can get above 70, you're going to have a pretty solid hitter, if not a good hitter on your hands. So, I like this a lot better than the last pick. And yes, I'm well aware if anybody said it, I haven't actually looked. I know his name is not Galarraga, but fuck it, it's close enough.
Yeah, actually, Andres Galarraga is the first thing I thought with him. But I thought, here's a perfect nickname opportunity for Andy. Andres Galarraga, the big cat.
I only nicknamed 3 of my 4 guys this year, so I'm trying to keep it on a low on that.
He is shorter, so I would just say the small cat or the little cat, whatever. Pretty good power, dude. I did look at him a little bit. Of course, you said that 4-point drop, and I was like, no, because when I was looking at guys, I was thinking, is this a guy that I'm actually going to want to take at 28? And my answer was no, because of that 4-point drop and how many years I figured he would actually have to develop. Just not enough. But still, not a bad pick. If you hit it right, good. Could be a good player. The one thing I do notice right now is he's probably going to be the exact power guy that I hate. Hate these power types. Guys who have absolutely no doubles, but hit home runs. It's like, what does 30 home runs do for you if you hit like 10 doubles? I mean, that's 40 extra base hits. Who cares? I'd rather you hit 25 home runs and actually hit like 25 doubles. It's 10 extra base hits. Doubles drive in runs too. And that would be my big drawback with him. The 4-point drop, what you're going to get out of him. You actually only have 21 true upside on him. Not a lot of time to develop. He's going to probably peak out at probably 24, 25. And just I was thinking, okay, bad. I don't see a guy who's going to explode. However, mogul, and he does have the power and the eye.
Power and eye, the go-to for Peter in 5th and 6th round picks. Doesn't belong with her in there. All right, we are going to move on as we're winding down here in the first round, which means I might actually get to bed at a reasonable hour. With the 25th pick in the 2103 amateur draft, Baltimore takes Bill Mr. Cowley, a 20-year-old right-handed pitcher who I don't like. Just going to throw it out there. I do not like this man. I do not like him here. I do not like him there. I do not like him anywhere. This is the second time we've seen this kind of weird-ass build, in my opinion, weird-ass build in this draft. A guy that is a 55% ground ball pitcher, but his power is his dominant stat. He's a 56-84 overall, 58 control, 66 power, 58 movement, 63 health, really low health. A couple things he does have going for him. Staircase. He's got what appears to be a nice staircase uppity thing going there, which is always good to see. His stats weren't bad. A couple of years, the home runs were a bit high. So every other, the home runs were a bit high. The strikeout to walkout ratio is not ideal for somebody that identifies visually he's a power hitter, but actually is a ground ball pitcher, which is, again, I would say probably the direction he might end up going. The biggest problem I think I have with him is the jump that he had. He went from a 51.83 to a 56.84. That's just not enough for me. That even with the stair case looking to go up, that I don't think that's enough for me to be like, yeah, I like this guy and I like him in the first round. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but just I'm not a fan of Mr. Cowley.
Well, I say this for one thing, or you missed. I looked back at his drop because he nearly made my last resort if people take everything that I draft list. That's because he only dropped, I think, 2 points.
When did
He
he?
aged.
I am just looking at his starting.
He
And
aged April 29th. So
I got
you go back to Sim 2, and then you can see what he was before that. You know what he dropped. I think
so
it
he
was
hit a
2.
2-point drop and then a 3-point bump.
Yeah,
Eh,
probably. Whatever. I
I'm
don't
still
care. I don't care about the bump because it's in the 50s. So I really just do not care about the bump. What I care about more is the drop. The drop tells you he's gonna develop for a long time. The concern would be that the control still isn't all that great. The health is a huge concern for me, just because, like I said, you have those 91 health guys. You hate it all because it takes away from his peak and his overall blah 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 blah. But the guy's never hurt. This is a guy who you might be lucky if you ever get 30 starts out of him in a year because he's always going to be hurt. And sure, if you're Luke Cook, whatever, who cares? 30 starts is amazing, but he's not going to be Luke Cook. He just has an interesting build, though. Still has that.
It's
I don't
unique to
know.
say the very
It is
least.
unique. You would think, oh, movement's going to overtake getting and blah 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 blah. But I think control is good enough where it might not do exactly what you think it's going to do. My projections don't overly like him. I liked him more than that. Projections have him at low 70s control, 80-ish power, and mid 80s movement. If you think the guy can get a little bit better than that, the control gets better than what you're thinking, and he can progress even more than an 84 peak. That could be a guy who'd be in the lines of high 70s control, maybe like a mid 80s power and 90-ish movement pitcher. Solid dude. Can do some things, especially with the ground ball rate. But yeah, definitely a guy that I was happy to see before my pick, I guess. In the end, is what really ends up with.
Yeah. Well, we will move on to the next pick. That is 26 at Colorado, and they take Larry Agus. Larry Agus, a 20-year-old left-handed hitting left fielder who has that superior D. I mean, he's just got good range, good arm, good fielding, solid fielding. Let me apologize on that. Solid fielding. He's got good power. He's got solid eye. Got okay contact. Just I like him. I like him. Do I think he's going to be a world beater? No. Do I think he's going to be a darn good bat, especially for where he's going? Yeah, I think he has the potential to be a very good bat for where he's, especially considering he's going to Colorado. If that power continues to develop and the contact stays decent and the eye doesn't go lagging behind, he could end up being a very nice player offensively, and not including the fact that he should have a very good glove. So I think it was a shrewd pick here in the later portion of the first round.
So, my first thing that I saw this guy is, when he went where he went to Colorado, I wonder how many times did Dan pleasure himself over this guy? I'm just wanting him to fall to him to the second round.
I
This
would
is a
guess I
very,
would not be surprised if Dan was trying to trade up to get him so he could just pleasure him over himself.
it might really be that. Um, I like the guy. He was on my list of guys who, hey, if I could get him, cool. but he was not a guy who I would really be satisfied with, even at 28. I know Andy really liked him. I can see why. Lefty bat, solid pop, good defense. You know you're getting, good health. He's going to be on the field. However, I just think he projects a very middling offense, even with being a lefty. You're going to have to platoon him. I know, I've said, it doesn't matter, just get him whatever, just get him on the field. You can platoon him, who cares? But it does take a little bit away from the value. It's different than getting a guy who can play every day. It's going to have to be a platoon guy. And I just, there's not a lot of upside there, to be honest. It really depends on how much he falls when he ages. There's only, true upside of 15. So what's he going to do from there? I see a solid starter, definitely. I'm not going to say he's a bad, but I don't see him being a real big difference maker.
I think those are all valid points. And with that, we'll move on to the Braves' next pick. Let's check the chat real quick. Staying, think we're going to kill him again on this? I don't know. Will we? We'll find out coming up after this short commercial break. And we're back with the 27th pick in the 2103 draft. Atlanta takes Zach Alamain. Zach Alamain, a 21-year-old right-handed started pitcher. With a solid fastball, good curveball, okay cutter, low ground ball rate. He is a control power pitcher with a movement kicker. I am wondering if Stang saw one of his old flames, Samuel Zwinga, in this pick, and that's why he took him. It's possible. I don't remember what Zwinga looked on draft day, and I'm way too lazy to go back and look at the moment. Maybe when Matt starts talking, I'll try to peek back. But
it wasn't that, because I drafted him.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go. So we know it wasn't that, so that's good right there. I like the strikeout to walkout ratio. It's probably one of the guys that I had a nicer one of those in this draft. There was a couple things I was not a fan of, and these are things that I know Maddie's going to echo probably pretty coherently and probably pretty quickly. His home runs might be a touch high. Even for me, I'm not a big fan of guys that are giving up 18 home runs in 114 innings, or even 14 in 94 innings. So even 10 in 71 innings is about where my limit starts. So, and then on top of that, he also gave up just a shit ton of hits. So he was just getting blasted, just like like a single girl in an all-male orgy, just blasted. He still put up decent ERA and some other stats, but I don't know. Like, he's a guy that could end up being very good. But just there's just some of the red flags there. Even I'm just like, no me gusta.
Yeah, I'm starting to mince words if Stang thought that I kind of shit on his earlier picks. For the most part, I think they were bad. The third baseman, I wasn't a big fan of, but now this guy, you burn him with fire because he sucked.
With
He
Andy
already jumped. It was a very big jump. I do not like him. I do not like him. I do not like him at all. Fucking all. The home runs are like, I don't know how you can see that and go, yeah, this is a guy that I want. I mean, I know you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, so you've seen some really fucked up shit this year. Look at this guy, and you go, huh? Okay, it's not that, so maybe. No, your eyes are very, very much deceiving you. This is the guy, he projects on my system. Not foolproof. I'm not saying the gospel. Do not go off on this shit, other people. But mid 80s control, low 80s power, high 70s movement. That gap between the movement and control when you're peaked is shit. Is complete shit. Not good. Do not want those guys. Burn them with fire.
All the fire. All of it.
All of it.
Yeah, I agree. I just, no. I'm sorry, Stang. I know he'll likely win 2 Cy Youngs. If he's gonna win 2 Cy Youngs anywhere, it's in Atlanta, where pitchers like that somehow get good, and then you trade them for a lot of stuff, and then they become crap again. Or maybe they were crap all along, and just the Atlanta magic wore off. I don't fucking know. I mean, you guys try to get people to vote with strippers, so fuck knows what's going on in Atlanta. Nah. Anyway, we will move on to the next pick, and this is Cleveland's pick, 20th overall, and they took Julio Hernandez. I'm hoping that's you clapping and not spanking your meat. And he is a 19-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. Low speed, no ground ball rate per se. I'm going to go ahead and say a little bit of a home run problem. Decent walkout to strike ratio, good ERAs, decent fastball, good curveball, solid circle change. It almost makes me wonder, based on looking at these vitals and the fact that he might be a controlled movement type, what he is going to project out at, what his kind of pitcher is going to be. I doubt he can make 8 or 9 points with the ground ball rate up. I don't even know if that's possible or if it's happened before. I am not sure. He was not a guy that was on my list. Again, I had a very tight, very specific list this year. If he does become that control movement guy, which for whatever reason I think he might become, even if it doesn't quite get as high as you want to see it in the ground ball rate, I mean, he could be a solid pitcher. I don't think he's aged or jumped yet this year, so I've seen a lot worse picks in this draft. Honestly, I think this pick will probably end up being pretty solid, if not good. So, Matt, it's your guy. Let me know what you think. What'd you see in him?
Yeah, Cleveland did a great job. Amazing pick. Next. No. But
Sure.
yeah, what I saw in him was guy who had good control. The control the movement gap, probably in that area where I've kind of dogged some people in the past, but where I don't think it's as big of an issue is because he does only have 51 movement, and he's just 9 years old. A lot of time to develop, or he should have, because we don't know. The home runs, yeah, they are a little high, but again, 51 movement, I don't really care. And again, if he got if he only has 51 movement in those vitals, and he did not have an opponent's batting average above 234, I'll take that. I think that's a pretty good indication that he can get some outs. He's a guy in the profile, in the scout file, projects upper 80s control. It's probably not that much of a shocker. Mid 70s power and mid to upper 80s movement. A little thing that I kind of saw in him too, he only has 66 endurance. That should rise up a little bit. Most starters, if you have them on starter usage, they at least go up to around 70, and that should give maybe the power and movement a slight boost, maybe a point on each of those, maybe, but it might give a little something into his future development to where his movement catches up with the control. That's my thought with that. A lot of upside with him. A good health guy too. Again, it's not so high that it's going to take away from his peak, but it's right there to where you're not going to be worrying about him only making 25 starts a year.
Yeah, the more I look at the pick, the more I look at the player. Again, he wasn't one that was on my scout list, just because based on where I was picking for right or for wrong. But yeah, I can see why you like him, and I can see why probably more people should have, especially people that picked before you. But I can see why you're probably glad they didn't. So, Percy picks next. Percy at 29 overall for the San Diego Padres took James Maine, a 21-year-old starting pitcher who is probably I'm going to guess the most advanced pitcher outside of maybe Witch in this year's draft class. At 21 years old, he's a 73-84, 76 control, 71 power, 76 movement, 30% ground ball rate. So he is not a ground ball pitcher. He is a power pitcher. And he's got a 90 fastball, which is great to see. Turns 22 at the end of the month. Turns 22 at the end of June. His statistics look pretty good. The 1 year he had 10 home runs, was over 90 pitches. It's about one per game. A little high for some folks, but still pretty. Not. I don't think it's too bad. Strikeout to walk ratio is amazing. Everything else looks really good. He's about to turn 22. He's got. I'm gonna guess because Matty is the end all be all in this for as much as people like or don't like it. But I'm gonna guess he's got an upside of what, like 7, maybe a 6. So he doesn't have a lot of upside. He peaks out, what, 2 years maybe? How much jumping time does he have in that 2 years, and how good will he get? If you're looking for a guy that you want to pitch in 2 years and it might pitch solidly, not a bad guy to take. But it really depends on the direction of your team and how much you think he could do. I wonder, with a lower upside available to him, how much he actually will progress and how good he can actually become. I think that he'll end up being a solid pitcher. But I just, unless moguls, which it fucking does, I don't see him as this big ace that I stole at the end of the first round.
Definitely, I think there's a lot of evidence in that. One, of course, is the lack of upside. That is one thing. He has true 7 upside. Did he jump? Fuck is his name, and who cares? Yeah, he has 7 true upside. That's not good. He's obviously going to be a control movement pitcher. Yet he throws 97 and a 30% ground ball rate. Those are clues that Mogul's given you. It's probably not going to be the guy you want. I don't know what you can really even take from his amateur numbers because he's that far advanced. I don't know what they really mean at all. I sincerely do not. Yeah, he had 86 strikeouts to, 86 strikeouts to 85 and 2/3 innings, more than 9 Ks per 9. But obviously, he's not going to be a power pitcher in the FCM world. We know that. Of course, he does age in a couple of sims. Because our sim will turn over to July 1st. So the random June 31st that our mogul does will age him. I see him as a long reliever. I just don't. I would not. No. Would not. No. Would definitely not take at all. I had a lot of other guys that I would take, including pitchers.
Percy says that his plan is to turn him into a closer. That might not be the best idea. I kind of actually like that idea, just because in my experience, and this isn't necessarily always true, that slows down the progression a little bit. So that might buy him another year or 2 to progress if he converts him to a reliever, which might make him a solid player. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it, but if that's his thinking, which I believe he's reading in the chat, I like to pick a little more than I would trying to make him a starter. So,
well, I'll say that's probably stupider than not being able to rationalize PR's comments about the draft, saying that the second round is better than the first round. That he actually meant, the second round is better value than the first round. Because slowing down development is not going to change the inner workings where Mogul says this guy will peak at this age. Not going to slow that down at all.
Well, okay.
It could change how his vitals develop, sure. However, like I've kind of posted on the forum too, say a 48 endurance reliever, quote unquote, is, and how their vitals look plays differently than a reliever with, say, 22 endurance with those same vitals. They will play completely different. That's how Mogul does that. So thinking that you're going to flip the script, not really.
All right. The thing is, the thing is telling us that we're running low on space. So I'm going to save this and then restart it real quick. So we can finish up with literally 1 pick left. I know, but I would hate for this something wonky to happen. All this. So let me save this real quick, and we'll be right back after these important messages from our sponsor, Jermaine. All right, and we're back after those messages from our sponsors. We just finished up talking about pick 29 in the draft, and now we're on to Minnesota's back-to-back, the last of the first and the first of the quote-unquote second. And with that last pick in the first round, Minnesota took, I'm using air quotes here because they didn't take shit. They were gone. They were, I do believe, autoed. And they took a quote unquote catcher. He's not a catcher. He's a first baseman DH, and his name is Ray Monscato, a 19-year-old hitter. Honestly, as a hitter, not the worst pick you could be stuck with. I mean, I think it would have been a lot worse for Mass if he got stuck with those two shitty pitchers that got autoed before him at 30 and 31 instead of the next two guys who might actually have a little bit of talent in them. I had really high OPS. He had okay power numbers. He's going to beat up on left-handed pitchers, and he might hit well enough for his righties to play all the time. So he is not my favorite pick in the first round, but he's far from my least favorite pick. I mean, honestly, at the very least, as a bat, I mean, he should be a pretty solid dude. He should have good contact, good power, and his eye should be well enough that it's not going to kill him. Was there better players still available? There's always better players available. That's just the way mobile fucking works. But I think in this case that there was a lot worse autos that happened, and Mass got fucking lucky on this one.
I'll say it's not terrible, but I really don't care to talk much about it just because you hit all of that on the head. I think there's a much more worthy guy just to talk about right away, and that is his next, Claude Morris.
Oh, I like Claude Morris.
I know Dave was kind of really hoping that he would fall. Simply, I will say, the guy who was definitely on my list at 28. You know, if the pitchers fell, this is probably the guy I would have taken. I asked you on it. You know, did you want the guy to be a high contact, okay power, or the okay contact, high power guy? And you said the power guy, but I kind of, at the same time, knowing your love of contact, you really were just trying to make sure that maybe that would be available and you could trade it for him.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. Claude Morris was a guy. For as much as I would have hated to have done it, he was a guy that I had in the back of my mind at 14, just because I like the bat. Glove, it's me. I'd put him in left field and live and die by it just fine. I mean, look.
Why not at first base?
Or first base. I'm pretty set at first base for the next decade, hopefully. So, but I like Claude Morris quite a bit. So the fact that you get him autoed next, yeah, probably the better pick in my mind. But I like that bat. I just really like the way it looks. Even if it is more of a contact double hitter than a home run hitter, that's fine. You put that kind of guy in the 2-hole and you're good with it. So
yeah, I would say this is almost like some weird love child of two players that I have, and that's Brett Alexander and Scott Brune. Brett Alexander, for the way the bat kind of projects, the contact would be higher than the power. He won't walk a ton. And then of course, Scott Brune and how the defense is not good in the outfield, but of how we do the corner outfielders can play first base. Scott Brune is a very fine first base guy. He can just stand there and he won't be complete ass. I think that's where I see this guy. You know, it's one of those things of, hey, if you have the first baseman you feel comfortable with, sure, great. If you're comfortable with tossing him out in the outfield and saying, I don't care, you're going to hit 300 for me, cool. Or, hey, DH. I really do like this guy. Good dude.
Yeah, I like him a lot better than the last guy I took. I even like him better than the next guy that he got autoed a couple picks later, and Mike Troxler, the other non-catcher catcher. It's if both those hitters, if all three of those hitters turn out to be anything decent or good, you know, God, for as much as I think that they all could be pretty solid hitters, if not good hitters, I rue that day, because if Mass is still active enough to be in this league at that point, we'll never fucking hear the end of it. These three guys I drafted, I'm going to be the first one to immediately be like, the fuck you did, because he did not draft shit. He got autoed a bunch of guys that might turn out decent enough to give him a solid hitting foundation. But let's call it what it is. They were autos. So, not that there haven't been phenomenal autos in our league, but good God.
Well, speaking of that, since, you know, we're probably already moving on to the other picks, you might want to hear about that pick the player kind of talked about that you don't think you like, but I think you actually like that when I kind of put
Oh
the
yeah, the
build
brain
together
teaser that I
to
had to
it.
read 6 times and still like, I think this is what you mean, and you were like, yes. I'm like, oh, thank God. It's a
Yes,
gift from
I meant
God.
that to be a little brain teaser. It wasn't just random me putting words together. You're very welcome to that. I hope it gave you a headache. And that guy is Mike Troxler because I don't care that he can't play catcher. Put him at first base. Do you like him as a first baseman? Uh, I think you probably should because the guy who he only fell 93 to 292, so 1 or 2 point drop. You're gonna have a lot of time to develop. The projections like him to project out to a mid 80s contact, low 90s power. Don't really care about the eye because that's just whatever. But and then in my profile, as you will know, the other people probably won't. But when I move him over from catcher to first base, he jumps up to his project score at an 88. Jumps way up there because of he's no longer being counted as a catcher. A dude who could really be a big hitter.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think better than the other, probably what? There's 2 or 3 first basemen drafted before him. If you
yeah.
count him as a first baseman, I think he could be the best first baseman in the entire draft.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I could, but I could see the point you're making on that one. I think I do like him better than some of those first basemen taken. Again, I like some of the first basemen that were taken, but I definitely see your point on that one. That's a very interesting take. But yeah, we're through the first round now and on to the second round. My favorite thing about the early second round is I made a list for picks 87 and 91 and sent it to Andy. And some of the guys on there I knew, like, hey, listen, I'm going to put them on there. I'm going to put the top of my list. I don't think they're going to fall, but yeah, hey, it's mogul. It's the draft. People get stupid. Who knows? And then I literally watched half my list go in the early 30s. I'm just like, well, fuck. So that being said, I ended up getting the second guy that I liked the most and missed the first guy by a fucking single pick. But so there's a lot of guys here in the early second round and beyond that I like quite a bit. I like the fact that Washington got Richie Western. I like that relief pitcher. He projects, in my mind, to be a very solid reliever.
Starter?
If not a starter. What?
Yes, starter.
Ugh. No, so again, I refuse to do it, but I understand it, and it's Peter, so God knows what he's fucking doing. I like the Mets pick of Mark Bly. Really like Bly. He's another one of those guys. Do one thing well or one thing not at third base. He does one thing well, and that's defense. He's a Gold Glove defender, I think, at third base. On top of that, I mean, with a higher eye and a decent other hitting vitals, he might actually hit a little bit as well too. I mean, his hitting stats in the minors look pretty solid. So, where was the other guy? Milwaukee, 45 overall, took Ross Entwistle. How the fuck Entwistle fell this far is beyond me, considering some of those guys we were talking about in the mid to late first. Entwistle just looks to me to be very good. He looks to be a clear, controlled movement guy with some good power. And he's got 2 really good pitches and third solid pitch. Like I really like Entwistle. And when I saw him go at 45, I'm like, what was everybody preview to this smoking? It didn't make any sense to me. Again, we all know what PR was smoking, but as far as everybody else, like I was surprised he fell that far. Another one I was surprised it fell as far as they did was Sean Sykes. Sean Sykes was another guy that when I was looking at Monet, I was also looking at Sykes. They were the 2 bats I was looking at higher in the draft. See him fall as far as he did. Not a huge surprise based on what we think that his build is. But at 19, as a lefty with solid defense and decent stats and vitals, the fact that he didn't go early was a bit of a shock. I honestly thought that he would go in the late teens, early 20s, early 30s at the worst. And here he is falling all the way down to 47. So, there was a lot of not surprises and a fair amount of surprises. I thought, in these mid to rounds. And again, the later rounds, I'm going to tell you right now, I did not look at that much. I sold all my picks. I didn't scout them. I think Arizona picking up Nick Fawcett, the catcher, might be interesting. He's a switch hitter. Hella good defense, okay arm, decent bat. Not a lot of upside. He's very limited on the upside, so that might be a bad thing for him. Really mad at the Dodgers for taking Tommy Bouye, right before I picked 19-year-old switch hitting center fielder. Loved this dude. The fact that I almost got him just makes it that much worse for me because he was the number one guy on my board at pick 87. He's got some speed. He's got all the defense in the world. He's a switch hitter. He's 19. Really, really liked him. Was quite upset that I did not get him because I feel maybe if I'd gotten him, I would have still got the other guy I liked, Torales, who I did take the next. Switch hitting 20-year-old with good range and solid speed. Again, not great guys, but guys that you can see, good guys take a chance on. So, who did you see second round and beyond that you liked?
Well, I'll say this. Richie Western was the guy that I was kind of going back and forth between picking at 28 overall. My idea was definitely, again, I do not convert relievers right away, but he was a guy that I saw was a clear guy to say, hey, this is a guy that you kind of earmarked for eventually moving him to a starter. Good control, good movement, not good movement, but good ground ball rate. A guy who I would really think eventually could be a starter because 200 innings is more valuable than 50. Yeah. Entwistle was another guy who was right there. He's another green guy. And for some reason, I just could not move him up my board enough to really want to take him at 28 for whatever reason. It was probably the fact that he is an 84 peak. That's probably all it is. I know he only dropped 2 points when he aged, so that's probably something I probably should have looked at and really highly just taken it. He's another really, really good player. Milwaukee will be very, very happy with him. I think again, this is as I look more in the second round and where I scouted and in the names that I had. God damn it, PR was probably right in the fact of what he meant, not what he said, because what he said was fucked up. But what he meant would be in the second round, probably had better value in the first round. I think you can have many pitchers, players, whatever, drafted in the second round that when you look at guys that are drafted in the mid to late first, there's not much separation in them. Entwistle could very easily be better than Leones or Alamane, Cali. They could very easily be better than those guys. So there was them. Sean Sykes, that was an interesting guy. I think this is a very much a build. Who in the hell took him years ago? I don't even know. Was it Ross Hollinan that I said something?
Ross Holland, I kind of think the Cincinnati guy.
No, I think it was a Fred pick, a guy who didn't look really great on draft day, but I think and what I said was much like Sean Sykes. Well, because there's no vitals that are 80, nothing just stands out and says, "Hey, look at me," But everything is right there on the. Here's another big word that I've used. I've used some big words tonight. But he's right on the precipice of being in those 80s. You could have, 3 vitals right in the 80s very quickly. But for me, he was the guy. He didn't make my list. Why I didn't take him would be because he fell from a 93 to a 90 and that lower health. I don't know he's going to have all that much time to develop. I know Andy said he would compare him to that guy he had in Arizona, the big bat guy.
Oh.
Anyways, let's all pretend we know that know the name. Yep, Rayford. Well, Rayford, I think he developed a long, long time. I would not be surprised if Sykes peaks out right at 24. This will be a solid guy, but that's where I think would distinguish him from a really great player to a really solid player. And what is interesting is I had Sykes higher than August because of just where I think he developed to. I'm not really worried about the big defense. You slide Sykes into left field and you're happy.
Jermaine thinks he's kind of like Jeff Turner. You compared him to Jeff Turner. I don't see quite the Jeff Turner build. I saw him more of a guy that I just hadn't dealt, which was Reckhoff. A guy that kind of ends up in those mid to low 80s and could contact, speed, and movement. Jesus Christ! And like a solid player, maybe a good player, but not like this superstar player. That's kind of where I was thinking of him at myself. Which is, and again, my pitchers were there, so I took them instead. But again, him and Monet were the two outfielders. I was like, kind of like their bats. Like there's something that just really intrigues me about them. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but there was something that intrigued me about both of them quite a bit.
Yeah, so honestly, as I looked at it, I think I really liked the Colorado draft. I liked Breland. A lot of picks I like, just not a lot of home run picks, I think, but could be wrong. Other than the McCone pick, the second baseman. There's a few second baseman that I liked more than even what J-Main took, whatever. I don't give a fuck at that point. You know what I mean?
I do.
Unless you're Peter.
So you like the guy the Mets picked, right? Joe Pivetta?
I did like that guy. I think we talked about him a little bit. The guy,
Yep.
really
Pre-draft.
really good defensive dude. I think there is this race for the speed, and you need speed up the middle and all this and yada yada yada. I think at the same time, I don't think you can forget about when a guy has such great defensive vitals that it'll make up for it. And he's not going to be completely slow. He'll be at least mid 70s speed, once you factor in the window jump and whatever progression he gets. And even if that, you just move him to third base, and you have a really nice third baseman as well. There's options there, but looking at least what the position change thing says, I would probably leave him at second base because he has that much range. I think that much range makes up for the lack of speed. There's him, John Warren, whoever took him. Good job. I liked
Yep.
him. He was another one on my list of guys who um, I would I would not be sad if I had to take him at pick 28. What did I like about him? I'm trying to find him and stall.
Well, here's
He
another
had
one
some
I like. I
speed.
like Dan Jones that went to Montreal out at 82.
There you go. Warren, yeah, to Boston. So the speed again, the range, I'm not really worried about because the speed makes up for it. Again, dude's 16. Like I just when they're that young, Mogul can just mold them into something really freaking awesome. That's where I really like that guy. Pavedo, yeah, defense. Other second baseman was Pat Harvey. Where did he go? I think another guy who had some speed. My notes were fuck second base, move him to third base. Because again, now here's to be a something I thought maybe we should do. Little tips and tricks of the draft without really giving away players that we like in the draft, but we can talk about this, and this would be a point of if you're ever wondering what a guy can do at other positions, maybe some know it, maybe some already do it, but others that don't. If you don't know what a guy can do at another position because you can't do it in the actual draft list, select them to a team when we're at the draft, and then click on their name, and then you can see what they are at another position because Pat Harvey looks pretty solid at third base. He comes out, 92, 78, 85. That's a guy you look at him, oh, second baseman. He can't field. He's slow. Okay, move him to third base. Do you like him? Because if you like that, take him. And I do. I would take that at third base. I liked him. What also was interesting, going down all the different names that I had, I liked a guy that's taken in the third round better than the Braves took in the first round. Alex Lasade. I know you can just do that little overemphasis on names to make them more difficult to pronounce than I can, but I liked Neville Huebner, also taken by the Braves, more than Lasade. Mostly because of I know that he only dropped 2 points. That tells me he's going to have a long time to develop. He has a really interesting build. The control is just of course you like to see it a little bit better. Who wouldn't? But it's interesting, kind of a power build, but the ground ball rate is right there. And other than that freshman year in the home runs, nothing is so alarming that you don't want to take him. And being that he's 17 and 51 movement, 51 overall, I'm gonna overlook the home run issue. And this is definitely a guy that if you think he's gonna develop till he's 25, 26, that could be a dude. Especially since he got the damn pick for $10 fucking million.
I was waiting how long until you brought that up.
Yeah,
I
so
was,
that was
I was,
something
I was,
where
I knew it was coming, and I was just waiting for it.
yeah, no, like I wasn't planning on talking about this pick and just parlaying, just moving right into the $10 million thing, but it just so happened that I looked up and like, is that the god damn it, that is the exact pick that he got, son of a bitch. Now that's just something where, Jason said, oh my gosh, you know, everyone knew what I was doing. Really? I searched on it with a search function. I didn't see where you said you were going to be moving these picks for cash.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm
I
pretty
could
sure.
have missed it.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure
That's
I asked him about picks, and he was told. I'm gonna look now because I'd swear I asked him about some. I asked everybody and their mom about a late second round pick this past draft because I was trying to pull a three way that clearly did not fucking work. But and I'd swear that I asked him about. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just told him that it was his turn to draft. Yeah,
yeah,
I just told him it was his turn to draft. I did not actually ask Pitt, but yeah, I did not know that he was doing that because I didn't see it anywhere, and I literally read every message in the chat because I'm a sad individual with no life. So,
exactly. But even so, I think Jason is one of those that usually doesn't make the draft. But I don't know where he thought that should click with everyone that meant his picks are for cash. Many people send in lists or just hope to trade them out. It's not ever a cash deal. It doesn't hurt anyone just to throw a message in the trade section to say, hey, this pick's available for the best cash offer. And you'll get a handful of cash offers and you'll be able to easily decipher which cash offer is bullshit and trying to lowball your ass and just giving them a free pick.
here's a
That's what he
hint:
did.
if the green thing says MZ, it's probably a lowball shit offer.
Yes, it's actually happened with my pick, and I was grinning the entire fucking time
To be
because
fair,
you thought,
I was 2 million off what it actually went for, so I wasn't that bad.
no, you were that bad because it was kind of funny because I knew the entire time. As soon as I said, hey, anyone who offers 15 million wants to up it, come at me. And I knew you were going to slightly go up from that because you didn't want to give too much.
That is
And
literally
it
my
was,
MO. Yeah, you're like 15. I'm like, fuck it, I'm offering 16. See what happens.
yeah, and it fucked up in your face.
Meh.
But so that's the thing of where I know Jason, he'll listen to this blah, blah, blah. He'll get all fancy in his pantsy. But dude, even if you told Andy, hey, I'm going to auction it off, whoever has the highest bid 10 minutes before draft gets it. You're going to get more than 10 million for it. You'll get more than 3 million for those fifth and sixth rounders that you took because, well, someone might have paid 3 million for the sixth round pick alone, especially if PR was on.
Yeah. Oh god, don't even get me started on that. Anyway, yeah, I mean it is what it's funny. I looked at the draft as a whole before the draft. I'm like, yeah, there's definitely some talent here, but as a whole, I'm not sure how I feel about the draft. If it's a good draft, if it's a bad draft, yada yada. And then the Mets go all in and get all the picks. And I'm just like, oh, I don't. This is not the draft I would have done that on. And when you actually pull them out and look at the Mets picks, you go, oh shit, like they might have actually come out pretty decent like this. They might have gotten three very good starting pitchers, a decent if not good first baseman. I know we differ on that. A solid second baseman, a good third baseman. Like, oh shit, like an okay shortstop. Like, man, oh man, they might have actually come out with a decent full team out of this draft. So, for all those people that always want to poo-poo the draft and PP this and whatever, stick to it. Stick to your guns. Draft well. Scout better. Magic can't happen. So we're starting to creep toward that witching hour of us being on here way too fucking long. And I know for everybody's sake that I need to get to bed at a reasonable time because otherwise my wife will murder me in my sleep. Maybe not the worst thing that could happen, but I'd still rather not experience that tonight. So anything else? Late round picks. Anything else about the draft, Matty, before we sign off?
I think the Mets had a good draft. Rockies had a good draft. The Braves had a good draft. I think overall, the whole almost like a shotgun blast. Obviously, with I think he said he had 24 picks. Obviously, that is a shotgun blast. But I think in the theory of taking guys that maybe you're risking on because you're gonna hope when those other picks develop more. I'd really, I think I did say that Joel Trout pick. If I didn't, I did think that one as a second baseman. Yeah, obviously 24 picks. It's kind of easy to say him, but I think it's kind of fun to say you didn't like a couple of them just because. But yeah, fun draft. I think it'll be interesting to see if PR was right. I think if you go, hey, the top 30 picks, you give them 1 point if you make the ballot, 2 points if you two more points if you make it to the Hall of Fame versus the first round and second round. See who gets more points. If someone wants to do that, that'd be awesome.
I'm pretty sure
I'll
I did
leave that up to you.
I'm pretty sure I did that not that long ago, and I don't feel like doing it again.
Well, yeah, you did do that for your little all-time list, but I'm just saying in this draft,
Oh, in this
60
draft,
guys, and
yeah.
in this draft alone, if you make an Andy draft ballot, you get 1 point. And then if you actually get voted into the Hall of Fame, you get 2 more points, so total of 3 points. So
Yeah.
to see the first round to see if PR's actual words are correct. The second round is better than the first round.
I don't think they will be, but that's just me.
But I mean, I don't think so either, but be interesting to see how close it is because, like I said, I think the second round talent value wise is not that much off, at least from the second half of the first round.
No, actually, that was something Dan and I were talking about. I can't remember if it was before the draft today, after the draft, or yesterday. I want to say it was before the draft or yesterday. That he's like, is everybody getting better at drafting, or what's going on? Because it just seems like in the last decade or so, guys that used to go in the mid to late second now go in the end of the first. Guys that used to go in the mid to late third, early fourth now go in the early second. I think that it's just people know what they want. People see talent where talent exists, where people might not have known about it beforehand. But now everybody's savvy enough that it's just a top to bottom good group of GMs drafting wise. It makes it a lot more difficult for those of us that used to cherry pick dudes at the end of the first, early second, third, that end up being pretty good players because they were there and they shouldn't have been. They're not there anymore. They're being taken at pick 12. They're being taken at pick 18 and 21. And